Hey my watchers, welcome. Today we are gonna see. What if Harry Potter had ability to talk and tame the blood dragon? Join Patreon for early access exclusive content of Super Op stories. Also contents that's too far for YouTube. You will get 400 content there, please do check that too. Please subscribe this channel, because definitely I will try my best to provide a valuable content for you all. Also check the description to support the original author for this beautiful creation. Harry knew he could talk to snakes after his second year. He learned to accept it after fourth year and was completely fine with it now. But it was dragons that always acted strange around him. Hermione noted it first year, when Norbert the hatchling would love nothing more than to cuddle with him every time he came to Hagrid's hut. Every visit would be met with joy. He would climb up to Harry's shoulder or into his arms, perch and preen on him, even while spitting fire at everyone else except Hagrid. Norbert adored Harry, and Harry adored him back. When Norbert got a little older and was acting out, it was only Harry he would listen to. Harry was also the only one Norbert wouldn't bite or scratch at. Harry was truly and honestly sad when the dragon had to leave with Charlie, but with him getting bigger and bigger, it was in Norbert's best interest. The mother horntail dragon at the Triwizard tourney? Mad as a hornet and twice as protective. But from what Harry was told, especially for a horntail, was nowhere near as violent as she would have been. He flew around her, flew under her and got his golden egg. She calmed down majorly after the false dragon spawn was removed from her nest and became almost pleasant to him afterwards. But that did Harry no favors during the tourney, so he wrote it off and concentrated on his clue. But the iron belly, the white iron belly from Gringotts, that was when it all changed. The state that the iron belly was in broke Harry's heart. He couldn't put into words the deep sense of wrongness that washed over him as he looked over the captive iron belly. Chains wrapped so tight around its neck it was bleeding all the way around. So weak it looked like it could barely hold itself up, let alone fly a great distance. So thin it was skin and bones, the likes Harry had only seen from stray dogs in winter. So sickly, there was no shine to its scales at all. It might as well have been pale, overly bumpy skin instead of the brilliantly bright dragon hide it should be, with old, healed scars mixed with newer angry red wounds. And the poor thing was terrified. With just the shake of the metal rattler in the goblin's hand, the dragon was cowering and backing away, trying to hide itself, make itself smaller. Dragons were supposed to be fearless, mighty creatures more powerful than any other. He felt ill from head to toe as he thought about all of the things the poor dragon had to endure since it hatched to be reduced to this. Suddenly, a deep determination filled his chest. He wanted nothing more than to save this dragon. Break him or her the hell out of this deep, dark pit and set them free for good. Ensure that they would never have to come back or deal with the mistreatment and abuse ever again. So, when they were pinned down by the goblins and the wizard guards of the bank and there was no place to go but up. So Harry took it, took the opportunity, took the risk, took the bloody fucking dragon. He didn't know how he knew to walk slowly toward it with one hand out, palms up, and wait until after the dragon had scented him. He just did. He didn't know how he knew the movement of the iron belly's head and the slight shaking of the tips of its wings was the okay signal. But he did. But right after the iron belly gave that light shake, Harry didn't hesitate a second longer. He jumped on its back and called for Hermione, Ron and the goblin to join him. A short while later they were bursting through the glass ceiling of the bank. Now free and outside, the iron belly gave one last celebratory blast of fire from its lungs. Then they all were flying free. While they were leaving London, Harry realized something very odd. It was like there was a second voice in his head. No, that wasn't completely right. It wasn't words, or not only words, it was also feelings. And he swore he saw something like a mental image or two that were not his. It was after he noticed this that he felt a pang of hunger that wasn't his own. The dragon then started scanning the surface of the river, searching for fish, and Harry realized what was happening. Somehow, someway he was now mentally connected to the bloody dragon. He didn't even know how he was going to explain this to Ron and Hermione. He didn't even know what this even was. All he knew was he could sense some of the dragon's feelings, thoughts, or whatever. It was like there was a spot in his mind newly dedicated to the dragon, and a part of the dragon's mind dedicated to him. A shared brain space they could both use. And right now, Harry knew that the dragon was very hungry. Near starving, in fact the goblins didn't feed them enough food nor fed them regularly. Harry looked around as well and saw on the left shore there were 3 large bucks, fully grown with large antlers. He knew the dragon probably wouldn't understand what he said if he yelled to him and pointed that way. Plus, he was on the dragon's back, not in front of them. So the dragon wouldn't see where he was pointing anyway, so Harry decided to try and send a mental image of the bucks he saw to the shared brain space. Almost instantly the dragon snapped his head over to the left side of the shore and spotted them. Before Harry knew it, they were in an eerily silent hunting dive. Moments later, the deer were snatched up, eaten, and the hunger pains Harry had felt went away. To say Harry was shocked would be an understatement. The dragon didn't leave his side. When they had stopped for the night and made camp, Harry made sure to let the dragon know it was free. They should go hunt, eat, nest, get as much water and exercise as they wanted. They could do whatever they pleased now, fly wherever it wanted. The dragon left to go hunting but returned immediately after. The dragon and him quickly learned how to use the shared brain space together. They sent one another pictures, thoughts, and stories constantly. Mostly Harry, who had seen more of the world and had met more people. The dragon's stories, well, they broke Harry's heart even more. Harry's assessment of their treatment of them was right, and he would never look at the goblins the same way again. The dragon, however, was excited to be free and couldn't wait to see everything. She wanted to fly to Scotland, Ireland, and beyond. She wanted to eat fresh sheep, ram, pig, horse. She wanted to know what they all tasted like and what it was like to hunt them. She was sure the horse would be the most fun, as it was the fastest. Oh, and he also learned that the dragon was in fact a she. Harry named her Lumi, as that meant something close to white or snow, and sounded similar to Lumos, the light spell. Hermione and Ron were confused and a little freaked at how close Harry and the dragon gotten, especially so quickly. After the initial shock had worn off, Hermione was okay with it, with Ron thought it was the coolest thing ever. If anyone had told Harry Ron and Hermione would be riding a dragon into Hogsmeade and have that same dragon fight besides them, the Order, the professors and students at the Battle of Hogwarts, he would have laughed at them. But as Lumi burned a line with her dragonfire right in front of the Forbidden Forest, scaring away all of the huge spiders and cutting off dozens of giants and trolls from entering school grounds, he had never felt more grateful to have his poor, sweet girl at his side. With the Forbidden Forest blocked off by a burning wall of fire and Neville and the others taking out the drawbridge, that only left the main gate and the stranglers that managed to break in past the wards, to say the tide of the battle had turned swiftly to their favor was an understatement. As Lumi flung a large werewolf into the air, then snapped her jaws to eat another whole, horror and terror washed over the faces of the Dark Lord's army. Realization quickly dawned on them. The light had a dragon on their side, and there was little the dark could do to stop her. Ron busted the locket. Hermione broke the diadem. Neville cut the snake in two. Snape had apparently been on their side from the beginning, and the Malfoys switched sides just in time. As the main force of the Dark Lord's army was cornered in the great courtyard outside and were forced to lay down their wands, Lumi preened proudly from top of the great hall's roof. She looked down at all of their good, if a bit charred and smoky, work. Harry knew that the war was over now. Now, he just hoped that all of this foolishness done and over with for good. Gods, was he ever wrong? Our poor girl, Lumi. Lumi. Scared, sick, and sad. Master had broken Lumi out? Lumi is free. Harry, yes, you are very free. Go live your life, be happy, and get healthy and heal up. Lumi eats, then comes back to Harry. Lumi follows Harry now. Harry, if that's what you want, wait. What? Lumi is best dragon. Harry sees. Lumi never leaves Harry's side now. Harry, surprised face, why does this feel so familiar? Valerian. The Valerian god of death, the afterlife, and endings watched the betrayal of Harrison James Potter unfold. Pure rage burned in his purple eyes as he witnessed it all. The things he was seeing through his enchanted viewing mirror happen to the last descendant of Ignotus Peverell were utterly sickening to him. When doom had happened, his sweet daughter Tessarion had saved the Targaryen family with her powers by way of dragon dreams. She knew they would be needed, At least 3 other Valyrian families also left around the same time. He had helped save the Peveril family, but in a different way. The 3 Paravel brothers used their magic to open a bridge across to a different world, just as the doom was happening. Balerion had wanted to let all 3 brothers live, but sadly he could not. The balance of magic and blood, as well as the balance of life and death itself, had to be upheld. Well, magic came with a cost, and the Peveril family was not supposed to survive. He had taken the first of the brothers, the oldest and proudest, the very next day. The second had given himself over to his arms after losing his mind to grief over his lost lover. The third brother, Ignotus Balerion, had let him live as long as he could. But when the time came, they had come to a mutually acceptable agreement. Ignotus would go with him willingly, earlier than expected, thus paying the price of life and blood. His sons and their sons would then live on under the protection of Balerion himself. The Peveril family, its blood and magic would continue on, a life for a life, fair trade. The balance was kept, the Hallow's purpose fulfilled. The Paravel family and Valyrian blood magic would not end with him, but carry on all the way to Harry. His wife, Maleys, the goddess of life, love, fertility, and beginnings, stood beside him, looking just as angry and disturbed as he was. She had also been peering into the viewing mirror with him. Harry had defeated the Dark Lord, but unknowingly still held a small piece of his soul in his scar. Someone had sold him out. Ever since the Battle of Hogwarts, the British magical government had feared him. His power was proven, his support had gotten stronger, and his dragon, even in the poor shape she was in, was beyond deadly to any witch or wizard alive. So, they were quick to use any excuse to turn on him completely. Any reasoning for killing him, as well as a few of his allies, was good enough for them. They had decided to launch their attack while everyone was visiting the burrow, the home to the only family Harry had ever known. They attacked the Weasleys mercilessly, even though they had always been the best of witches and wizards and didn't deserve it all. Molly and Aruther died, but all their children and Hermione survived. They had killed Severus, the man who was hard at work making amends. He went out standing in front of his students, much like he did when he stood in front of Lupin as a werewolf years before. Worse than that horrible woman Umbridge killed Teddy, an innocent newborn, whose only crime was beating the odds of being born to a werewolf father. Maleys' rage was palpable as they watched that, as well as the screams that followed from Harry. The department of grief and anger in his bottle green eyes was haunting. Those idiotic witches and wizards had thrown off the balance completely in just one day. Nearly everyone in magical England and many beyond owed Harry a magic debt. One now doubled or tripled with their betrayal. Harry's future after the battle was near written in stone. His fate was not to die this soon. He was set to save the lives of many men, women, and children during his time as an Auror, as well as stopping and catching multiple murderers. On top of that, Harry was intended to father 3 children of his own, as well as be the acting father to Teddy Lupin. Then later, a grandfather to many more. Now the people he would have saved would pass on. The children they would have had would never be born. The murderers he would have stopped wouldn't be stopped as soon as they would have been under his watch or not caught at all. The people he and his line would have saved over. The generations as Aurors would be lost, and the children of those people would never be born. This ripple effect this would have on the balance of life and death was catastrophic. Growing from tens to hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands, it would take generations for the wizarding world to recover, if it ever truly would. He and his wife turned to one another with furious eyes. For over 1,000 years he and his wife had worked together side by side. They made Valyria together. They made dragons and dragon riders together. They had raised 12 children together, sons and daughters. Now all gods and goddesses in their own right. They didn't need to speak. There was no need for words between them right now. They knew exactly what they were going to do. Balerion swore to protect the Peveril line, not the wizarding world. If they wished to toss Harry and all the good things that he would bring with him away, Balerion would not stop them. He would simply take Harry back. He would return the blood of Paravel back to world where it belonged, Not to mention that Harry was a beacon of light, an inspiration, a hope, a hero for the ages, paragon of good. With him brought back home and put into play, perhaps they changed the fate of the Targaryen family as well, and with them all of Westeros. Harry's trial was an embarrassment and a farce. He had a binding spell, the Langlock curse, as well as magical cuffs built into the chair on his wrists. Overkill when you added in the fact that he no longer had any fight left in him. Harry's heartbreak and grief from losing 3 most important adults in his life as well as his infant godson was clear on his face. He had cried himself hoarse the last 2 days. With no food and barely any water, he was beyond exhausted, tired and worn. The whole Wisgamount talked over one another while refusing give him a chance to speak at all. No one came through the door to be his defense this time. He was sure it was because they made sure no one would show. More than likely lied about the time like they did before Hell. They rushed the trial to 2 days after they took the borough. They probably didn't even have to do much more than that. It wasn't long, not even an hour, when they declared his punishment. Due to being in possession of a part of the Dark Lord's soul, he was going to be forced to walk into the Vale of Death. Harry couldn't help but smile and chuckle a little at the dark irony of that. Even as more tears poured down his face, he'd be going out the same way Sirius did. Somehow that felt comforting. In his and his wife's pocket realm, Balerion also smiled. Little did the wizarding world realize they would be saving him time and effort by sending the boy straight to him. Balerion would welcome him like old friend when he arrived. Harry didn't remember what happened before he was pushed through the veil. He would have been ashamed of that fact looking back, seeing himself lost in tears and grief, barely able to stand, feeling so weak, lost, hopeless, and helpless he might as well have had a Dementor right there feeding off of him. All happy thoughts, memories, and feelings were truly gone. The wizarding world had finally broken him. Snape and Arthur died for him. They were gone forever, and Molly and Teddy too, his sweet little godson. Teddy? He barely got a full 2 weeks with his favorite little boy. Teddy didn't even get a full 3 months to live. Lumi was screaming in the back of his mind, wanting to burn her way to him. They had chained her back up again and injured her as well. She wouldn't be able to reach him here in the Department of Mysteries anyway. He shouldn't have waited for her to heal more before trying to remove the magical neck and leg restraints. He should have just done that right away. But it was too late to do that now, so here they were. 2 guards with firm grips under his arms, being tossed into the Vale of Death. He felt a lifting and a shove. Then suddenly, everything cleared. His mind cleared. His emotions calmed. His wounds and his body stopped aching. Everything was suddenly peaceful. He opened his eyes to blink, and that was when he realized he was in an entirely different room. He turned around and looked behind him. There, a near replica of the doorway of the Vale. A mirror, tall and ominous. One that looked like the mirror of Erist but with different writing on it was in the left-hand corner. He slowly turned his body back where he was facing forward, trying to take the rest of the room in. That was when he saw them. 2 of the most ethereal people he had ever laid eyes on in his entire life. Harrison James, descendant of the Peveril line. Welcome to our realm. They were tall, lithe people. 1 male, 1 female with silver hair falling from their heads all the way to their knees. One shrouded in black, the other robed in white with perfect porcelain-like faces. Perfectly shaped shoulders, arms, legs. Harry's jaw dropped as he took in the sight of them both. We have an offer for you. One we believe you'll be happy to take. I'm sorry. An offer? Apologies, I'm quite confused right now. Harry mumbled as he blinked rapidly and shook his head. He was completely out of sorts, and he knew it. A soft chuckle came from the ethereal woman as she moved to his side. She took his arm under hers, and gently started to lead him to a table and chairs that was already set up for them. It seemed the table, setting, maybe even the whole room were personalized to make Harry comfortable. The style, the placement, the knickknacks all reminded him of the headmaster's office at Hogwarts and the Burrow. Something about everything collectively made it feel at home. That's quite all right, young one, and somewhat expected. You've just gate-traveled and had to handle a lot over the last few days. A steaming pot of tea, a plate of tarts, as well as the cups and saucers were already waiting for them, ready to be poured and tasted. The woman gently settled him into one of the seats as the man who was following close behind her took one of the chairs as well. The third and last seat was obviously meant for the lady. Take a moment, catch your breath. After you've gained your bearings and oriented yourself, we'll continue our talk, the woman said as she took the teapot and poured out 3 cups. Harry did in fact take that time to orient himself as much as he could. It was this feeling of vertigo and derealization that was hitting him both at the same time. He was here, but he wasn't here a moment ago. And was here even real? He had died, he was sure he was dead, so was this place had to be the afterlife, purgatory, some other place. At least it seemed like a physical place. He stopped that train of thought with a few blinks, as he thanked the lady kindly for the tea. He took the warm cup in his hands and sipped. By the time he got to the bottom of the cup he was feeling much better, and his head was far less swimmy. Traveling though the Vale, especially the way you did, can be quite taxing. Now if you're feeling better, we can begin our talks. Those words got Harry's attention. His mind focused full force back up front. They sobered him up and cleared his head out much quicker than the tea had. Oh yes, you had an offer for me, Harry said, sounding more than a bit wary and unsure. But, before we get into that, apologies, but, who are you? Why are you helping me? How are you able to help me? And where even is here? 2 similar toothy smiles crossed the faces of the man and the woman sitting with him. It did nothing to dismiss Harry's worry or anxiety. So, your death, your life, and because I died before my time, you're giving me another chance. You more than died before your time, young one. Your life was deeply connected to many others. Important people, places, events, lives, births and deaths. You had a wide path set before you. Destiny or fate would be the words I believe your people would use, but it is a bit more complicated than that. When your life was cut short, they were all cut short with you. Harry seemed to be monitoring both the man and woman's faces as she said this. Why would you help me with this? And what will it cost me? The woman seemed upset at the last question and gave the man a sideways see what they did. Look. The man returned the look to his wife, then motioned for Harry to calm and listen closely. Perhaps it's best if we start from the beginning, with Antioch, Cadmus, and Ignotus, who were not from your world at all, but from ours. From a kingdom called Valyria. Harry sat, mouth open and dumbstruck, his 4th cup of tea half full in his hand as his mind took in all the information he was just given. Dragons, fallen kingdoms, dooms, bridges across realities, and blood magic. Dragon blood and Merlin, if he thought his mind was spinning before. So, because the balance was thrown off so badly, you're going to make me an offer. Well, yes, quite a good offer if we do say so ourselves. We let you live out the rest of your life. Only, you live it back in our reality, the home your ancestors hailed from. That piqued Harry's interest and his heart gave a little leap. Hope he didn't even know he still had bloomed in his chest. This will not be an easy task, nor will you be free from your destiny. You still must meet the marks you had set before you, only it will be in Westeros, not the wizarding world. You were meant to save many lives and inspire many more people. Stop criminals and murderers, prevent some important murders and assassinations. Be a beacon of light and justice. You'll have to do the same in the life we will trade for you. Harry felt his hope drop and felt an acid burn his mouth. So, even if he agreed, he was still not free from the shackles he had been born with. You were also meant to be the parent of 3 children, and the father figure of Theodore. You will still have those children, only under different names with a different parent. Harry's heart dropped even more at that. What about Teddy? Would he be able to go with me? He only lived 3 months. He wasn't even given a chance. He stopped his words before he got choked up. He still couldn't get that memory out of his head. Little tiny Teddy, defenseless at the end of Umbridge's wand. He had to ask. He had to at least try. He wouldn't be able to live with himself if he didn't. Cyric looks to her god-husband with a determined glint in her eyes. He gazed back toward his goddess wife and nodded softly. Teddy's life was also taken too soon as well. He was not supposed to die, especially not that young. He also had a destiny before him, lives to save, children to raise, even a few lives to take. In the interest of justice, we would be open to sending him with you. We could add him as a part of your offer, but to add him in order to keep the balance, we would need something extra from you. His head switched back and forth at the pair as they spoke in turn. What is the extra something you would need? You would need to give birth to Teddy and your other children yourself. From your own body and blood. In short, you'd have to become a woman. He'd have to become a woman. He'd have to go through the pain of labor and childbirth. More than once. But he'd get Teddy back. He'd get to see his sweet face and cradle him in his arms again. Raise him, watch him grow. It would be worth it. I accept your terms. Helamis Peveril. That was to be name she was going to go by from now on. A name picked for her by the gods themselves. While people still worshipped the 14 in places in the east, in Westeros, the place she was to be sent, they mostly worshipped the old gods or the new. Meaning the gods of the first men or the faith of the seven. There were others in the mix, but those were the most popular. Helamis, however, would be from Volantis, the first colony of Valyria and the city of magic, where the Valyrian gods still had temples dedicated to them. Lumi would be going with her, and Helamis, couldn't be happier about that. She wanted her dragon with her. The poor thing had probably gone through enough after being recaptured by the ministry and chained back up again. Her poor, wounded, brave girl. They also sent her with all of the information and knowledge she would need in order to live her life without suspicion. From day-to-day things to once-a-year holidays to Valyrian language, history, and, of course, religion of the 14 Flames. Her main goals? Restore the worship of the 14 as much as she could in Westeros and save the Targaryens and their dragons. Helamis would be a devotee to the 14. They were the ones that gave her this second chance, after all, so she was all for it. Because of them, she was able to keep her magic, though it would be slightly changed. Her magic would be radiant magic or holy magic now. Better for healing, protecting, but still good for defending as well. She was still going to be a vessel of light, goodness, and justice. She was still to save countless numbers of people. It was part of their deal. In this world, she'd just have to go about it a bit differently. She'd heal, save lives, inspire change, and hopefully stop a war that was on the horizon. Oh, as well as get married, give birth to and raise 4 children. But by the gods, she would do it. The sensation of falling was jarring. On second, she was saying goodbye to Balerion and Malaise, and the next, free-falling on to Dragonback. Lumi gave out a screech as Helamis let out a shriek. Both started flailing in their own ways. Helamis with her arms and Lumi with her wings. Luckily, her sickly white dragon caught a good wind under her wings, and soon, they were righted. As soon as Lumi's back leveled out, Helamis got a good grip on her scales and held on tight. A suddenly striking pain hit her stomach as she was jolted. She grimaced and held on a little tighter, Lumi letting out a small, uncomfortable noise as well. After a few moments that Lumi and Helamis both took to collect themselves, they both let out a sigh of relief. The first thing they noticed was that the wind was warm, the water they were over seemed calm, and they were flying west. The second thing she noted was that, just like Lumi, she now had cuffs and chains on her hands and ankles, as well as a semi-ornate collar around her neck. She had just freed herself from captivity from slavers. Her and Lumi were now fleeing over the stepstones, where 2 sides were fighting a war for a second time. The third and most surprising thing she noticed was when Helamis looked down to see what was causing her stomach to hurt so much, only to be met with the shocking sight of a swollen belly. Her jaw dropped open and her eyes widened as the rest of her brain seemed to freeze. Pregnant. She was pregnant, maybe halfway through her term? She didn't know. Far along enough for her stomach to be noticeably rounded, but not to have popped out yet. For months? 5 months? First trimester? No, second. Right? She had no clue. It seems the goddess of life and the god of death took her request very literally. They truly did send Teddy with her. As her eyes stayed locked on her stomach, she suddenly felt a bit of movement under the skin, a sort of watery shifting. She realized she was feeling of Teddy moving. His little knee pressing on her right side, he was moving his legs. The 14 had really done it. They had really given Teddy back to her. A large smile came across her lips. They were safe. They were free. They were alive. Her and Teddy had been given another chance. And she was not going to let it go to waste. A dear Lumi.
C'est loi India.
Faster Lumi. And keep west. Lord Corlys. There's been a dragon sighting. The sea snake snapped his head to the commander of his scouts. Everyone else on the bridge also went quiet. Where was it sighted? And where is it heading? It came into view in the east, already past the gullet. It looked to be heading directly west. Corlys' eyes raised. It's already flown past the gullet? How was it not seen before? And what do you mean, directly west? Headed straight for Dragonstone, Lord Corlys, maybe even King's Landing. What was the coloring of the dragon? Vemund asked from his spot beside his brother. The lookouts said it looked light-colored, white, silver or gray. And sir, the lookout said, it looked like there was someone riding the dragon, sir. Corlys looked to his brother with hesitation in his eyes. Vemund looked panicked. Silverwing and Vermithor never leave one another's side, unless their riders make them. They have no riders and are still on Dragonstone. Vemund began. Sea Smoke hasn't left Driftmark. If he had, my wife would have written us and he would be flying east, not west. Grey Ghost. Last spotted on Dragonstone, but that was months ago. And it's Grey Ghost. He could be anywhere. He goes in and out of the gullet as he pleases. Corlys nodded, then turned to two soldiers standing at attention at the door of the war room/meeting tent. We're not going to risk it. Get me parchment, pen and ink. We're sending out 2 ravens out immediately. One to Dragonstone, the other to King's Landing. We'll inform them of the dragon, and about the possible rider, and make them the fastest ravens we have. Halamis kept flying west, straight towards the sunset. Even as the pain from her stomach steadily grew worse. Every few minutes a ripping, tearing feeling would overtake her, causing her to curl up on herself. She'd try her best to ignore it, but it was no use. It hurt. And more than that, it was hurting Lumi, too. With every stabbing pain, would come a shriek from her dragon's mouth. She hated that her dragon had to share her pain with her. Lumi had endured enough of her own. She tried desperately to keep focused on what was ahead of her. Keep heading west, till we hit the shoreline, then find a castle. Keep heading west, till we hit the shoreline, then find a castle. She repeated to herself over and over, a temporary mantra to help keep her resolve. But it was becoming harder to ignore. It wasn't only her either. Lumi was exhausted. Her poor girl didn't have much energy left. Halimi would bet that the ministry had been starving her again. It was then that a remote island, about 6 miles long and 4 miles wide, showed up just left of the horizon. It had a large risen rock face on the southern end, maybe 50 feet high at its tallest point. Good enough to shelter them for a few hours. Halamis sent the mental image of it to the shared brain space. Lumi quickly looked towards it, then angled and swooped down, heading that way. They would land, rest, then pick up their journey afterwards. She would dismount and hope that not being jarred by the flying would lessen the pain. Crown Princess Rhaenyra read the raven message that had been sent by Corlys Outload. Demon, Jace, Luce, Bela and Rena were all listening to her, standing in front of her in a semicircle. Wouldn't be so worried if the dragon didn't get pasted the gullet so easily and was heading due west. For Dragonstone or King's Landing, we do not know. If the scouts are correct and it does have a rider, this could spell danger. Do be careful. The sea snake. Rhaenyra then lowered her hands and looked to her uncle and husband. No one in the world knew the dragons and their habits better than him. His face was void of emotion, but his eyes were worried. Silverwing is currently nesting. She will not leave her cave, and Vermithor will not leave her side for longer than it takes to hunt. Not with Cannibal taking up residence in his cave here in Dragonstone once again. Vermithor won't give him a chance to eat his clutch. Sea Smoke is still on Driftmark. Even so, he never flies past Dragonstone, let alone the gullet. Gray ghost, then? Rhaenyra questioned. To her surprise, Demon gave a slow shake of his head. Gray ghost was spotted 2 weeks ago passing Claw Island, headed north, and he only ever flies past the Gullet or east during winter, when the hunting gets harder. For the warmer weather as well, I assume. Rhaenyra's eyes widened at that. So, this dragon is unaccounted for. A new wild dragon? Luke asked, sounding more curious and excited than scared. Not wild, Jace corrected, seeing the threat that his little brother did not. They said it looked like he had a rider, as it was heading directly east, which is a perfect straight line here and to King's Landing. The dragon isn't just flying around. It's following course. It must have a rider. Rena added. Demon nodded slowly in agreement. Could it be a green? No, all the greens that can have a dragon have claimed a dragon already. Daron has been in Old Town for over a decade. All the other green dragons are at King's Landing with their riders. Also, none of the green's dragons are white or gray. They have 1 gold, 2 blue, and Vagr, green. The dragon is coming from the east. What's east of the Gullet, if we follow their path back? Jace asked. Essos, specifically Volantis, Slaver's Bay, and Bravos. Demon answered with an angry growl. Rhaenyra's breath caught. The 3 stolen eggs, she said, almost in a whisper. What? Stolen eggs? When? How? Luke questioned, now starting to feel the worry the others were feeling. When my grandsire was newly on the throne after Meager was killed, a woman named Alyssa Farman came to Dragonstone and became good friends with former Queen Rhaena Targaryen, the great aunt you were named for, Demon said, nudging his head to his daughter. She was a charismatic and charming person. Made quick friends with Rhaena and her daughter. She asked the former queen to fund the building of a great ship. One that could handle longer voyages, maybe even past Yeti itself. Rhaena tried to convince my grandsire, but he refused. Alyssa then departed for Bravos, but she stole 3 eggs and took them with her when she left. Luke and Rhaena hissed lowly at this, but Jace just locked his jaw in anger. He, unlike the others, had heard this tale already and knew what it meant. When she got to Bravos, she was suddenly able to pay to have her ship made, and made quickly. By the time the eggs were found to be missing, Alyssa had hired a crew and disappeared with her ship into the seas. Corley swears he saw that ship when he was docked during one of his 9 travels. We could never prove she sold the eggs to the Sea Lord of Bravos, however, but the Bank of Bravos and the Sea Lord were more than willing to pay the crown a handsome consolation prize for the loss of the eggs. Since Grandsire needed the gold to repair damages from the war and start building the King's Road, he took the offer. From what Grandsire told me, the Sea Lord said, I can't say if I do have them or if I don't, but even if I do, they will not hatch. They will just be pretty stones. You think Alyssa might have kept the eggs warm? One might have hatched. There are no other eggs or dragons, unaccounted for, but those 3. Even Cannibal is watched just in case he breeds. Demon remarked as he and Rhaenyra looked at one another. They didn't need to say another word to understand what the other was thinking. They both knew this could turn bad and turn bad quickly. It would be suicide to try to attack us here, or King's Landing. 1 dragon can't take down 3 or more. It doesn't make sense. Jace stated as Baela nodded. No, it doesn't. Demon said, and Rhaenyra locked her jaw and placed her hand over the swell of her own stomach where her girl, her Visenya, lay in wait. She took a deep breath and made her decision. We need to know why it's heading this way, and who, if anyone, is riding it. If it is an enemy, I don't want the fighting to be here on the island. Definitely not by the dragon mount. I want it kept away from the children and the dragons. Cannibal alone will rampage if he catches the scent of dragon's blood. Rhaenyra started, her hand tighter around her belly. Rhaena shivered visibly at the terrifying thought. I'll take Caraxes and meet the dragon. I'll intercept it before it gets here, and if it's feral or a Bravosi plot to attack us while there is fighting still a war in the Stepstones, we'll tear it to fucking pieces before it can land. And if it's a wild dragon? Not feral. Rhaena spoke, soft sympathy in her voice. Lead it back to the dragon mount. Let it find its own cave. Keep a close eye on it. See if can be tamed and claimed. I'll go with Demon. 2 dragons are better than 1. Jace said. No, you will not. Rhaenyra instantly burst. You are my heir. You will stay here. Let him patrol east of the island. Pasted the dragon mount before Driftmark waters. Demon added. Rhaenyra started to give a glare, but Demon quickly explained himself. He shouldn't go with me and Caraxes, I agree, but we don't know how big this dragon may be. Cannibal is a perfect example of this. By the time he showed himself, he was full-grown and far too vicious to be dealt with. Patrol towards the east. Keep your eyes open. If it is feral or too big to take on my own, I'll have it follow me over to the Driftmark water border. Jace and I can bring it down together there. It never reaches the island proper. It bleeds or drowns. Either way it dies. Rhaenyra frowned slightly outwardly even though her heart was screaming. She didn't want her son in harm's way. Also, while Demon didn't use the words chase and bait, she knew what his plan entailed. But then she saw the look in Jace's eyes. The look that was begging her for a chance to prove himself. She sighed loudly. Very well, but be careful. I expect you both and your dragons back home safely tonight. Aemond walked into Otto's solar without knocking. The door was opened, and the manservant said he was needed urgently. His dear mother Queen Alicent and surprisingly Aegon were already there. Aegon was unsteady and weak on his feet, already reeking of wine. He looked as miserable as Aemond was feeling. Aegon may be his brother, but he was a selfish monster. If it wasn't for mother and grandsire covering for him, he would have been disowned by father years ago, illness or not. But they did, so Aegon never learned. He kept drinking, whoring, and abusing the ladies of the keep, including their dear sister. As much as he hated it and hated his brother, Aemond could do nothing about it. He was the older brother, Hylyanna was his wife, and they wanted him to be King. Aemond was discussed by him. He wanted nothing more than to spare Hylyanna from her husband's hands. But with Cole, grandsire, and mother all backing and covering for him, there was nothing he could do. He doesn't get a chance to greet them or say anything before Otto starts talking. A small slip, a raven message was still in his hand. There has been a dragon sighted heading this way from the east. It has already passed the gullet. Headed toward us or to Dragonstone, we do not know which. According to Lord Corlys, it is not one they've seen before, and it may have a rider. Aemond eyebrows and lone eye raised at that. Targaryens were the only ones in the world to have dragons. Even if the blood of Valyria was still out there, as few as they were, it was only the Targaryen family that claimed them and hatched their eggs. A rouge dragon was bad. Very bad. And if a non-Targaryen was riding it, well, holy shit, was all Aegon said. The look his mother and grandsire gave to Aegon could have started another winter. We need both of you to find this dragon before they reach Dragonstone. If it is a lone dragon, let it be. But if they have a rider, it is imperative you bring them here. The Blacks already outnumber us in dragons. We must secure whoever the rider is to our side. By any means. Aegon grimaced and looked ill. Aemond just nodded his head respectfully. Good. Now, get on your dragons and go. They landed safely behind the rock face, away from the wind. Luckily the fish were plentiful. So after an hour and a half and a little dragon fire to start a small fire pit, they both had full bellies. The pain in her abdomen had lessened the moment she hopped off dragon back and went away completely after eating and relaxing. She was aching and tired, as was Lumi. She curled around her rider as both got ready for a nap. She had no pillows or blankets, but her Lumi was a dragon. Her scales were warmer than any blanket. She nudged herself into the crook of Lumi's arm, and after placing one hand on her round belly, closed her eyes. Just a nap 4 hours or so. They would wake up rested and ready to continue on. She was sure not much would happen in a few hours. They did just arrive after all, right? I'll start sweeping the waters between here and Dragonstone. You go further east, then fly towards Dragonstone. Sweep the other way, Aegon yelled after they had been flying for about half an hour. They had left Blackwater Bay and were a little over halfway to Dragonstone. We should stay together, Both of us go east. Emond yelled back. Aegon was flying Sunfire just above and behind him. A smart move as Vhagar was larger and meaner. Emond made sure to keep looking behind his shoulder so he could keep an eye on his brother the entire flight. We need to find it quick. It will be quicker if we split up. The dragon can't be that far from Dragonstone. Emond couldn't argue that fact. Still, a wild or unfriendly dragon was no joke. Why in the hell would Aegon want to go alone? That was not the smartest move to make right now. And what if it decides to go after one of us? You arse. Quit arguing. You twat. I'm the older brother. Do as you're told and let's get this over with. I want to get home, Proto. Aegon yelled, then snapped his reins and swooped left, starting his search pattern. Emond just cursed under his breath. Emond knew he would be fine, he had Vhagar. Sunfire was another matter. He was barely full-grown and had never fought another dragon. This may be one of the stupidest choices Aegon had ever made, and that was saying something. Emond just sighed and turned his head forward. Suvgan Najat and Bagon, fly straight. Watch carefully, he commanded. An affirmative rumble came from Vhagar. His dragon set her attention in front of her and looked more alert. If Aegon wanted to be an idiot, Emond couldn't stop him. He'd be damned before he got caught unaware and at a disadvantage because his brother wanted to fly off by himself. Stay right around this area. Circle and keep your eyes open. Demon yelled to Jace. Jace nodded and turned his face to the wind and started yelling commands to Vermax. The pair went into a holding pattern as Demon and Caraxes continued flying forward. Jace and Vermax had officially started their patrol. While Demon would never admit it, just knowing he had backup nearby made him feel a bit better. Much like when Seasmoke and Leaner were nearby during the battles in the Stepstones. At least he knew he wasn't on his own. No one could know what would happen while hunting down an unknown dragon. Having another rider nearby could be the difference between life and death. Let's start looking, Caraxes. Jerngen. Search. A loud, high-pitched whistle was the response. Halamis was unbelievably tired. So, after stirring when she heard a loud whistling that sounded far away, she ignored it, rolled herself to her other side and closed her eyes again, trying to fall back asleep. When she heard it a second time, this time a bit closer, she sat up and looked around lazily. Lumi woke as well but seemed far more unhappy at hearing the noise. She started shuffling her wings and feet nervously, keeping her head and neck turned up towards the sky, seeming far more alert and her horned ears turned up. Go back to sleep, she mumbled to her sweet girl as she shuffled to fall asleep again. That was not to be, because right after Lumi sent a thought was pushed into their shared brain space by Lumi. A thought that caused her to become fully awake very quick. Unfriendly. Unsafe. Getting near. Halamis moved and started to stand up as quick as she could given her new condition. Lumi started to move as soon as Halamis was freed from her side. The dragons walked a small distance down the sands. She turned her head up and stared curiously up and around. The thin pointed spikes on her back looked sharper as she raised her hunches. She seemed to be looking for or scenting something. Halamis quickly waved her hand and used her magic to blast air at the small fire pit. The flame quickly went out, and even though the sun was up, she hoped that would stop any smoke from giving them away. Even if it might be a little late for that now. Lumi kept looking up to the sky, scanning the area, looking and looking. Suddenly, her head snapped to the left, and her tail started lashing around. Bad. Angry. Coming now. Hide. Lumi sent as she sent a picture of a crevasse in the rock face wall. It definitely wasn't big enough for Lumi to fit into, but if Halamis stood sideways, she could fit. Halamis sent a quick, "Okay, I'm hiding," as she turned and ran for the only bit of cover they had. As soon as she got there, she squeezed herself and her belly in. She was shocked to see Lumi following. Lumi rushed over to the crevasse as fast as a sick, injured, grounded dragon could and blocked the opening with her own body, covering Halamis, Babe, and the gap completely. Stay. Protect. And oh, move. Was the next thing Halamis got as Lumi started growling. What's going on? What's coming? She asked Lumi through their bond. What Lumi sent back made her blood freeze. Images of an angry, red, whistling dragon with a blonde-haired rider heading right to them. A dragon bigger, stronger, and healthier than Lumi Halamis was now terrified. Not just for her, but for her sweet girl. Because even though Lumi took out giants, spiders, and dark wizards at Hogwarts, this was another dragon. A dragon against another dragon is always a dangerous, bloody ordeal. She didn't want that for her Lumi. She didn't see a way she could win a fight against that vicious thing. It had been hours now, at least 2 but likely more. He and Vagger had been sweeping the waters for a while. So far, nothing. They had covered a lot of area, but to no avail. Emond took a deep breath and adjusted the collar of his slicker. He was starting to get worried. If he wasn't seeing the dragon here, it may have already passed Dragonstone. If it passed Dragonstone, that means it was closer to Aegon. If it was closer to Aegon and he got hurt, his mother and grandfather were going to kill him. He was debating if he should halt his search entirely and head over to where Aegon would most likely be. He was, after all, his brother's keeper. Even if he hated it. Before he could make up his mind, something grabbed Vagger's attention. He saw it in her body language, and in the way she went from flying to coasting in the air, then sniffing more. Scent. Dragon. New. Follow. Vagger communicated through their bond. She turned her body and started following a path that Emond couldn't see but knew was there. Good girl. Perfect. Good. Track. He called out to Vagger. She just sent back smug feelings. The happiness from being on a hunt beaming from inside her. Her pride heavily appeased by her rider's praise. She followed the scent forward until they came upon a standalone island dotting the waterline. New dragon. Old dragon. 2 cents. Both there. Emond blinked as he wondered who in the world the second dragon be. He didn't have to wait long to find out. As soon as they got close enough to the island to see a rock formation, clearly Emond heard and saw who it was. The high-pitched whistle and the worm-like wiggling red form in the distance gave it away. Demon had found the island as well, which means he had tracked the dragon here too. Shit, he cursed. But the red, wiggling blur was faster than his powerful girl. He saw Demon and his dragon swiftly dive behind the island's rock face. A moment later, he heard the angry roar of a third dragon. A roar he knew that clearly meant, back off. 7 curse it. Follow. Land. Emond yelled, as he urged Vagger to join the other dragons. She gladly sped up. His orders were to find out if the dragon had a rider, and if it did, bring them back with him. If Demon and Karazes killed the dragon or the rider, no, that was not going to happen. Emond was not going to fail. What the fucking hell was all that Demon could breathe out after he landed Karazes on the sands? The first thing he had seen before he even dismounted was the dragon and the horrifying shape it was in. It was a few steps above a fucking skeleton. Panic and fear in its foggy blue eyes as it cowered against the wall of rock behind it. It was giving out warning roars, but the thing barely looked able to hold its head up. Its scales had no shine, and its spikes and horns looked like dried-up tree branches, ready to snap and break with the smallest amount of pressure. But the worst part? The fucking clamps and chains. Clamps and chains on its legs. On its wings. Wrapped around its fucking neck so many times and so tight it was fucking bleeding. It was then that his eyes turned to the other open wounds and healed scars that the dragon had. He had been wrong, dead fucking wrong. It didn't come from Bravos. It came from Slaver's Bay. This dragon had been starved, tortured, and tormented. The slavers had been raising it to break it. Demon wanted to fucking kill every fucking one of them. Zaldrizes Bazdari Ixos Daer, a dragon is not a slave. It seems those fuckers over east had forgotten that. He'd happily remind them, starting with whoever had dared to try and ride it. Caraxes gave a loud, piercing whistle as Demon started to dismount, letting the other dragon know he was not to hurt his rider. It was he dismounted without issue and set feet on the sands. He drew his sword, just in case the false rider was nearby. He started to slowly sidestep his way forward, carefully making his way towards the spooked and anxious dragon. Come obey, dragon. Demon called out as he put his hand out, the same way he would approach Vermithor in the caves. The dragon's head was alternating between looking at him and Caraxes. When it started snapping its head quicker from side to side and its eyes got wider, Demon knew to stop approaching. The quickening of its breath was also a clue. If it panicked and tried to attack him or Caraxes, it would be dead in moments. Caraxes was already on his legs and hunched. He was ready to pounce. Demon didn't want this dragon dead. He wanted to get it back to Dragonstone and get it the help it needed. The dragon keepers needed to tend to it urgently. Calm, dragon. Obey. Demon yelled again. Only this time he yelled to both Caraxes and the white dragon. Looking back and forth from them both, Caraxes lowered his neck and settled a bit into the sand. His angry, vicious eyes still locked on the unfamiliar dragon, ready to attack it at a moment's notice. The white dragon, on the other hand, wasn't listening at all. It wasn't calming, relaxing, or settling in any way. There was only two reasons Demon could think of for this. 1. The dragon was deaf. Or 2. It was already bonded. A real bond. Bonded dragons only obeyed their riders. No one else. Just as Demon was about to let out another command, a large shadow followed quickly. By a loud resounding boom was heard. Just a bit further down the beach, from out of nowhere, well, from the other side of the rock face, landed Vagr. Demon's eyes widened as his dragon turned his head and hissed unhappily. Vagr quickly silenced him with a deep, resounding roar of her own. The pale white dragon curled into itself more but stayed in its spot against the rock. Well, fuck, were the only words that came out of Demon's mouth as he watched his nephew dismount. Lumi, standing her ground. Stay a ways from my human. Caraxes, weak-ass winged bit. Granny Vagr. Boi if you don't watch yourself. A part of Demon was expecting the same snot-nosed kid he had seen during the funeral on Driftmark. Unkempt semi-wavy hair, lanky legs, constant sour expression on his face. But the person that dismounted Vagr and started storming over wasn't that boy. Demon didn't see any of that boy anymore, actually. It seems in the near 6-year stint he had hit puberty, and that growth spurt had more than changed him. He was much taller. Taller than Jace and maybe even taller than himself. His waterproof slicker making him look even more so. His hair was now healthy and straight, in the half-up style that both he and Viserys also wore, and the way he walked, Demon knew swordsman's gaunt. He's seen it many times in his life, had a walk much like it himself. Even with the eye patch aside, the boy looked dangerous. Things were tense enough before he showed up with Vagr. Demon already had his hands full trying to control this situation with the two dragons. One possibly wild and the other definitely agitated. Now there were 3 dragons in total, with 2 heavily armed dragon riders with a possible 3rd dragon rider lurking nearby. The older teen walked toward them at a steady pace. But he quickly and smartly slowed and stopped as he assessed the scene around him. When his eye looked over the white dragon, the teen's face twisted to mirror Demon's own feelings. To the 7 hells with them, Emond declared lowly, a curse to the people that had harmed it. The boy locked eyes with Daemon for a moment. Demon didn't move or speak to him, just kept one hand toward Caraxes and the other toward the white dragon. Emond read the room very quickly, and swiftly moved into action. He turned to Vagr and raised his hand as well. Calm, Vagr. Rest, Emond shouted to the Queen of Dragons. She heard him clearly and settled herself down with a rumbling from her lungs and from the sand, resting with her lower half in the water, upper half out of it due to her size. Caraxes visibly relaxed more right after Vagr did. He laid his legs under him and furled his wings to his sides. However, the white dragon, as panicked as she was, didn't calm down one bit. The pale tail was still thrashing, and its neck still snapping back and forth from human to dragon in turn. It stood still with its side flank firmly against the wall, looking either too scared or just unwilling to move from its spot. Well, Demon chimed in his own head. At least the boy isn't an idiot and knows how to keep his dragon calm. That could have made the situation much worse. What are you doing here, Tauba? Daemon asked with more than a little bite to his voice. He nearly missed the lone eye twitching at the title. I have orders from the crown to come and check the report of a dragon sighting, as well as orders to bring the rider back to King's Landing, alive, if there is one, of course. The boy answered, when you say, from the crown, Do you mean my brother? Or do you mean your grandsire and mother? Demon asked waspishly. He imagined he could see Eamon's teeth grinding. Does it really matter? Was the snapped reply. It does to me. Fuck your mother and grandsire. Demon thought but didn't say it out loud. While he would have preferred it coming from his brother, Eamon did have a small point. A very small point, in Demon's option. Otto was still the hand of the king and Alicent was still queen. For now. Well, there has been no sign of a rider yet, Demon said as he turned away from the boy and back to the white dragon. Well then I guess I'll just go and have look around for them, Eamon said semi-smugly. Perhaps after handling this situation first? Demon snapped with more than a little sarcastic bite to his voice. He also motions of his hand to the overly stressed dragon. Very well if you insist. Demon grinded his teeth. The 14 help him or he was gonna murder this half-breed brat. Dragon. Obey. Calm. Settle. Eamon called out in their mother tongue. His hand out much like Demon's was moments ago. Just like last time with Demon. The dragon ignored the Targaryen's words. Unlike late time with Demon, this time the dragon hissed and spat angrily at them. Helamis didn't like this. She didn't like this at all. Lumi had safely locked her away, but in doing so had also blocked out any light or sight to the outside. The air was getting thinner and more noxious by the moment. The stress had also caused the muscles in her abdomen to tighten again. The tearing pain was going to start up again soon. Helamis just knew it. She could barely even hear what was going on outside. Even that was no comfort. In fact, was making it worse. She heard the red dragon landing and screeched, and Lumi roaring back. Then someone yelling out, but to what and to who she didn't know. Then came the sound of something huge crashing into the sand, followed by an even louder and deeper roar. Dear bloody Merlin, that roar could have given Godzilla pause. It was that monstrous. Her mind was running wild, wondering if she or Lumi was going to be torn to shreds by claws or jaws at any moment. Moments pasted before and she heard another round of sounds. This time commands. She couldn't make out the words, but the voice and intention were clear. They must be moving closer to them. She definitely heard her girl's cat-like response. She didn't know if she was proud or exasperated. Please don't make them angrier. Please don't make them angrier. Was all that was running through her mind. Lumi, what's going on? What's happening? She asked through the bond. 2 dragons. 2 riders. Not safe. Stay. Lumi sent back. Who are the other dragon and rider? Helamis asked with trepidation. She didn't want to know the answer, but she needed to know. Lumi quickly sent back a mental image. The man with the sword she saw more clearly, and the red dragon she remembered from the image before. The man with the long jacket and eye patch was new and made her blood freeze, but what was that thing behind him? That was when Lumi sent a second image. Oh dear bloody gods, the largest, greenest, most terrifying dragon she had ever seen was there. The horntail wasn't even a quarter of its size. She would have preferred Godzilla. They were dead, her, Lumi, Teddy, they were all going to die, she was sure of it. Her heart was pounding in her chest. What was she going to do? What could she do? They were outnumbered, outmanned, outdragoned. The pulling in her abdomen that had subsided before now returned full force. A renewed ripping pain torn through her. She grimaced but bit her tongue, and grabbed her stomach as she tried her best not to scream. She tried her hardest to keep quiet. Lumi's pained whimper probably helped cover her. After she caught her breath, she heard 2 voices on the other side of her dragon barricade. This time she could make out the words. The 2 men were shouting in Valyrian. Different variations and mixes of the words. Calm, obey, rest, and of course, dragon. Helamis blinked as she turned her head so she could hear the outside better. A few moments later, she heard the words again, the same 2 voices definitely speaking Valyrian. Lumi let out one more, back away roar, before Helamis realized she had to do something. She couldn't just stay hidden back here and let Lumi get hurt or attacked. The dragons answered to their riders, and the riders spoke Valyrian. If all of them, Teddy included, were going to make it out of this alive, she'd need to talk them down. So, she took a large breath, held it for a moment, then called out in a shaky voice in Valyrian. Hello? Ritzes. Eamond's head snapped to Demon at the faint word. Demon eyes looked toward the dragon, then behind it. They had both frozen and didn't move muscle as they waited to see if they could hear it again. Demon lifted his sword a little more as he looked at Eamond. The silent question of "You heard that too?" on his face as he gave a head nudge in the direction the muffled voice came from. Eamond nodded in confirmation and pointed to the same place he swore he heard it from. From behind the dragon's flank, Demon nodded at that, then made a motion with his sword. Eamond quickly drew his as well. Demon dared to take a few more steps forward, but only a few, as that was all the white dragon would allow. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Demon called back. "Yes, who are you? What do you want?" was the faint reply. "What we want is for you to calm your dragon and come out from hiding. Who we are is the people need an explanation as to who you are and how you came upon this dragon. Leave us alone. We were only trying to reach the mainland, and the only reason Lumi isn't calm is because she doesn't trust you." A pained screech then came from the dragon, and a more muffled one from behind them. Eamond and Demon looked at one another in confusion. Then Eamond's eyes traveled back to the dragon, re-noticing its injuries. "They must both be injured," Eamond said in common in a low tone to Demon, as not be heard by the other person. The light seemed to go on in Demon's head at the same time. "If we keep our dragons calm and don't attack, will you come out and answer our questions truthfully? If you do, we will make sure to see that you and the dragon's injuries are cared for." Demon was careful not to say "your dragon" or make a promise. While he did intend to see the dragon treated, he was still not so sure about the rider. If the rider was the one that injured the dragon, he'd honestly just let him die and save them all the trouble. "If we wish to leave after, will you let us go?" was the muffled reply. Demon didn't like that idea, a dragon and rider lose in the world, but he also knew they would have a hell of a time stopping them from leaving. On the other hand, dragons were drawn to Dragonstone. Once the dragon got there, it might not want to leave. "If you wish to leave, yes, now are you coming out?" Demon barked, making sure his impatience was heard. He and Eamond then stood near shoulder to shoulder as they waited for a response. Eamond twirled his blade as they waited. After a few more moments, the dragon seemed to give out an annoyed huff. It then slowly moved over about 5 or 10 feet, just enough to make some walking room between it and the rock-face wall. A few moments later, a small figure walked out from behind the dragon. Both Eamond and Demon's eyes widened, and Eamond's jaw dropped. It was a girl, couldn't be more than 15 or 16. She had long, pure white Valyrian hair, loose and wispy around her face, a small angled nose, and a soft pointed chin. She had a tan-colored fabric wrapped around her that was little more than rags and stopped at her knees. Just like her dragon, as there was no question in their minds now, she was the rider. She had 4 clamps, 2 wrists and 2 ankles on her, with a foot and half of chain still attached to each one. On her neck was an ornate, but sickening slave collar, one made of Valyrian steel. Her wide, terrified eyes stayed on them, like a rabbit looking at 2 hungry wolves. The right eye a lavender purple, while the left eye was bottle green. Both bigger and more soulful than any eyes of a young girl had a right to be. She then winced, and groaned, and grabbed her stomach, her pregnant stomach. I think I might be losing him," the girl said, in the softest voice Eamond had ever heard. Demon and Eamond looked at one another for just a moment, then both turned and ran to the girl at the same time. "Eamond, I can respect you, but I don't like you." "Daemon, I don't like you, but I can respect you." "Halamis and Lumi, Ush, Demon, deal with each other later?" Eamond, "Yep, later." Calm. We going to help her." "We're helping her," Eamond shouted to the white dragon, as it looked panicked after Demon and Eamond got to close. He was sure if its rider wasn't as close as she would have breathed fire or attacked with her claws. "We need to get her to Dragonstone, her and the dragon. Now, the maesters can treat her right away," Demon said, as an Eamond looked over the injuries on the girl. Nothing dangerous, nothing deep, but she was still skin and bones with the bruises and cuts all over. "My orders are to bring them to King's Landing. There are more maesters to attend her at the Red Keep." Eamond protested. "Fuck your orders. If she is losing the child right now, the babe could be gone before you reach it. The maesters at Dragonstone are just as good as the one at King's Landing. and we have 3 midwives. She needs to be treated now. Emond bit his tongue as he quickly argued with himself. His grandsire would throw a fit. Child or not, he wanted the rider. Emond wasn't sure if he would care or not if she lost the child on their way there, as long as his orders were followed. However, Emond did care if the child was lost. The mother was Valeraine, as well a dragon rider. That child carried the blood of their ancestors, and there was barely 1 Valyrian child born per year it needed to live. Emond looked to the young Valyrian woman. Her 1 lavender eye and 1 green eye looked back up at him. Oh fuck it. He couldn't in good conscience let her suffer or let her child die. Not without doing everything they could to help the babe survive. Is that an order? Emond asked Demon leadingly. What? Demon questioned, his face squishing in confusion in a way Emond would find hilarious later on. Is that a direct order from the Crown Prince Consort? Emond asked, more leadingly and with an arched eyebrow. Demon grinned like a feral cat as the meaning of the words dawned on him. Yes, it is. Emond nodded with a light smirk and turned back to the girl. We're going to take you to where you can get help. Okay? Tell your dragon to follow us, but not to attack. Dragoon riding make the pain worse? The girl said in broken common. Emond and Demon both looked to one another startled, but quickly recovered. That why I landed. Rest here with Dragoon. Pain too much. Demon and Emond looked to one another. So, she did speak some common after all. Noted. Passenger. I'll take her as a passenger on CRA. He's the blood WRM. He wiggles and crawls through the sky. He's more likely buck her off or harm the babe more. Taking her on him would be even worse than letting her ride her own dragon, Emond interrupted. Demon growled and bared his teeth at the teen's comment and challenge. But he was right. A ride on Caraxes was bumpy to say the least. I'll take her on Vhagar. She's taken other riders into the air while they were with child. She knows how to fly carefully. Besides, Caraxes is swifter, and someone has to reach Dragonstone. Before we do, tell the maesters to be ready for the woman and child, as well as warn the guards to stand down. Warn the guards too. I'd rather not be shot with a Dragonstone arrow today, nor do I think Vhagar would take that to kindly right now. She's already in a hunting mood. The demon stared for a moment at the teen, before he nodded his head. You can land in front of the courtyard gate. Don't land by the dragon bridge. Far too long a walk. They can take her straight into the maester's tower there. Demon ordered before turning and running to his red menace. Emond turned to the girl. Are you able to walk? The girl gripped at her slightly swollen stomach, grimacing and holding back a yelp. She shook her head no at him. I'm going to lift you. We're going to take my dragon. Okay? The girl nodded, then turned to the white dragon. Lumi, follow. No attack. Follow. The white dragon gave an affirmative rumble but didn't look any happier. Emond got a grip on the side of the girl and lifted her up, catching her legs with his opposite arm. After she got over her startle, she wrapped her arms around his neck. She was afraid she might fall down otherwise. Now carrying her, he started running to Vhagar. While getting her up the rope ladder might be a bit difficult, he could do it. And any pause would give Demon enough time to get that much more ahead. With luck, the maesters would be waiting and ready as soon as they landed outside the courtyard. Jace was finishing another rotation when he saw a dragon approaching, only this wasn't Demon. Nor was it the wild dragon. For a wild moment, he thought it might be his mother, but Syrax had a different build and nose. Then he saw the rider. Wah Aegon. Hello there. Nephew. Where's that dragon at? He heard his uncle yell from his dragon saddle as he swooped around and started circling him. Demon went after it. I'm holding here just in case. What are you doing here? Emond and I got sent out as well. He went further out. I started back and combed this way. Jace's eyes went wide, as he wondered what to do now. Demon and Emond were now both out there, with a possible the wild dragon. Well, maybe they found it. But what if they found one another? Is that him? I think that's him. Aegon yelled, looking up and pointing. Sure enough, coming out from behind a rather dense cloud, were Caraxes and Demon, flying like a bat out of hell. He soared nose down, swooping toward them at breakneck speed. Both riders stayed circling as he approached them. Jace, dragon mount now. Alert the dragon keepers. Injured dragon, incoming. Demon yelled as he speeded skillfully between the two dragons, then kept going. Shit! Jace cursed as he turned Vermax around. What the fuck? Aegon snapped as he also ordered his dragon to move and follow. Only Aegon didn't just follow. He snapped the reins a few times and urged Sunfire to go faster and move quicker. He started catching up to the red dragon, flying just behind with some difficulty. What dragon got injured? What dragon got injured? Demon, where's my brother? Aegon spat out as he chased behind him. The red blood WIRM was too fast for him, and was soon out of his reach. Aemond held the girl close to him as they flew. He had taken off his jacket and wrapped it around her before they went into the air. She was far less covered than he was, and his leathers would more than keep him warm during this flight. Both were secured onto his dragon by chains and ropes. Vhagar's saddle wasn't small at all. Even so, it was different to carrying someone near grown with him than one of the twin toddlers he normally had in air with him. Especially with the growing belly, her arms still held a vice-like grip around his neck shoulders. He kept his arms around her while his hands held the reins. The white dragon was flying just behind them to the upper right. He was sure she had called her Lumi. A female dragon then? She was doing her best to keep up. It was obvious the poor thing was tired, but desperate to stay with her bonded. She was flying closer than an unfamiliar dragon would, but was still following diligently. Her attention was on her rider, and her eyes never strayed far from her, only giving out a chirp every few minutes to let her rider know she was still nearby. Aemond was sure that it was only because of her rider's order and the fact that she was not being harmed by him at all that the other dragon tolerated her rider being on another dragon's back, and the fact Vhagar would quickly correct her. He had his she-dragon flying them smoothly forward. He had been debating pushing her to go faster. He fought with himself about it. But Vhagar was a powerhouse. The babe needed a smooth ride just as its mother did. They also needed time for the Meisters to ready for their arrival. Rushing was not in the best interest for any of them, dragon or human, so he'd leave the rushing to Demon, and just make sure the new dragon and rider arrived safely. He turned his good eye to the girl, taking a moment to check on her. She was still holding her belly and was still obviously in pain. But she was no longer yelling, and the pain was no longer coming in waves, her one purple and one green eye looked up at him as she held on. But she said nothing. He didn't have to ask what that look was. He'd seen it on others' faced before. She was terrified. Given the circumstances, he honestly couldn't blame her. Where are your people? Where is your family? He asked in Valyrian, so they could talk to each other easier, and maybe talking in their mother tongue would help calm her. He turned his attention back and forth from their flight path and to her. Dead, the slavers killed them. It was just me and husband near the end, she said in an oddly detached but earnest tone. His blood started changing from fiery rage to icy cold. Who is your husband? Where is your husband? He hated to ask but needed to know. Lavar, they killed him, too. They only needed me and the baby, she said softly, turning her head into his shirt. He grinded his teeth as she said that, and in the back of his mind he was screaming. Do you know how far along you are in your term? Not exactly. For moons, maybe 5, she said, seeming to relax more and calm. Where are you taking me? She asked, correcting herself as her eyes looked to her dragon and back. Dragonstone, my family's first seat. We have maesters and midwives there. They will be able to help you better than we could, and the dragon keepers will know how to help your dragon as well. What is your name? He asked next. Halamis. Halamis Peveril. Peveril? He was sure had read that surname in a book some time ago. It was in one of his father's books in his room with his model of old Valyria. Which book he couldn't remember. What is your name? Since you asked mine, she asked. Aemond, Prince Aemond Targaryen. Will be at Dragonstone shortly. Promise. Krasis landed on all 4 claws with only a semi-loud boom. A moment after he landed, his rider started dismounting. The guards in and around the courtyard were shocked. As the Targaryens normally took flight and landed closer to the dragon mount or the bridge, there was no time to remain shocked. As the prince started barking orders the second his feet hit ground. You Get the maesters. We have a rider injured, coming toward us right now. You go tell every guard and archer they are not to fire at any dragon that's not the cannibal knot until this mess is settled. Unless ordered to. And you, go get my wife, he said, as he turned his head to look behind him. Just as he expected, there were at 2 spots, one gold and one grayish-green, that were growing bigger and bigger as they got closer. Let her know the wild dragon, the rider, her 2 brothers and their dragons will all be arriving shortly. Jace headed for the clearing between his mother's castle and the dragon mount. His plan was to land as close to the dragon keepers as possible and alert them, as ordered. Aegon turned and changed Sunfire's course, deciding not to follow Jace. He landed by the courtyard gate instead. He set his dragon's feet not far off from Carax's. Carax's wasn't happy the unfamiliar gold dragon was near him. He started hissing and furling his wings. Sunfire gave a low screech in reply, but then kept his cool and ignored the other dragon. Aegon jumped off his mount unceremoniously and rushed his way over to Demon. Didn't you hear me yelling? Yelling what? Demon spoke in a deadpan voice with a glare to the half-breed Hightower brat. What bloody dragon got injured? And where's my brother? Shouldn't you have asked those questions in the opposite order? I mean, well, they're both kind of the same question, Aegon said sheepish, the wind now knocked out of his sails. If you were so worried about your brother, why did you follow me instead of turning around and looking for him? I didn't know where he was. You did. I'm not going to fly into the path of a raging dragon, either, but you're willing to let your brother fly into that path? He'll be fine. The twat has Vagor, as well as years of experience tolerating enormous amounts of pain. What does that matter anyway? He's the fucking spare. Demon's jaw locked, and eyes pierced deep into the boy's soul. The sudden shock of fear knocked Aegon to rights. His addled mind cleared up enough for him to realize what his mouth had said. Not only was it very messed up, not only was he contradicting himself at the same time, but he had said it to Daemon, another second son. Aegon gaped like a fish as Demon's knuckles on his crossed arms turned white. The ornate castle door to the left of the courtyard opened. Rhaenyra exited with Luke beside her. He was holding her and her growing belly steady as she moved quickly. No one wanted to risk her falling. They started heading swiftly over to Daemon and Aegon, both with looks of surprise on their face. The 3 midwives came flocking out the same door a heartbeat later. On the other side of the courtyard, a painted white door opened. The 2 men of the Maester's Tower rushed out. Master Gerardis and Yearwood, who was a learner under his master. As soon as they were all close enough, Daemon addressed them all. We found them both. Prince Aemon should be arriving with the rider and the dragon in a few minutes. He will be carrying the rider with him on Vagor. Both are injured. From what I could tell, the 2 looked to have been starved, tortured, and abused probably for months on end. Best guess is they escaped from Slaver's Bay then flew west towards safety. They still have chains hanging off of them. They will need treatment, water, food, and a warm place to sleep and recuperate. In that order. Jace is filling in dragon keepers now, so they will be ready to treat it once they arrive. Maester and midwives, you should start preparing a room as well. You'll need tend to the rider as soon as they arrive as well. Yes, my prince. Yes, Prince Daemon. Yes, your highness, was chorused around them. The junior Maester and junior midwife rushed back through the white door. My love, why the midwives as well? Is he that injured? The rider is young girl. Pregnant young girl. Moons along in her term. She's in pain and said she felt like she was losing the baby. Rhaenyra felt a chill running down her back from Daemon's words and the pictures they brought to mind. Her eyes snapped to her midwives, who looked to her at the same time. She barely needed to nod her head before the 2 picked up their skirts and ran. One to the tower, the other back into the castle. Luke looked pale from the moment Aemond was mentioned, but now he was turning greener and greener, looking as if he would turn tail and run. If he didn't have his mother's arm, he might have. His eyes darted nervously into the distant sky. He was not ready to see Aemond again, even after all these years. Couldn't you have just said that when I asked? Aegon burst loudly from Daemon's other side, arms flinging around, drunken and dramatic. You reek of sour wine and dragon. You know that, right? Demon snarked. Aegon glared at the Rouge Prince, fighting with himself as his face scrunched and teeth gnashed. But Aegon knew he couldn't just say anything he wanted to say to Demon. Not on Dragonstone. Not without repercussions after a moment. Aegon looked around then grinned like a Cheshire cat. You know this space is a little too small for Vhagar to land properly, right? Demon's eyes widened as he looked at the ground in front of the courtyard entrance. Fuck men. Clear out those carts. Carriages. To the air. Aemon saw the growing dot on the waterline that was Dragonstone. They were nearly there. He felt a glowing sort of joy in the corner of his head from Vhagar. She recognized her home, where she had hatched and grown. She was glad to be back. Yes, I know. Girl, let's get you home. He sent to her. Her one-eyed rider could not share in her joy or sentiment. This was his sister's castle. Under her rule. Both of her boys and her stepdaughters lived on this island. Well, at least one of the stepdaughters. The other went back and forth from Driftmark. Fact remained, the ones who took his eye would be there. People had referred to his family, the Greens, as the Snakes. Half because of the green they donned. Half because of his grandsire's ambition and the underhanded things he had to do in deals he had made during his time Hand of the King. But right now, he felt like he was the one walking into a snake pit. The blacks outnumbered him there. No one under that roof would care if he got hurt or died. No one there would protect him. He would be landing feet on their soil. He would be lying to himself if he thought he would be safe there. Even if the threat of Otto and Alicent retaliating if something happened to him should be enough to give them pause. Even the fact that he and Rhaenyra share a father might be enough to buy him a safe. But short stay, even that wouldn't last long and would be risky. But his eyes turned to Helamis. She was still holding on to him tightly. But her eyes weren't fixed on him in fear anymore, but looking around and took in the beauty of the sky and the water. Aemond had to admit she was quite beautiful herself. She had the glow of otherness that all dragon riders had. But it was more than that. Her touch was gentle. Her voice was unique, always with the hint of Valyrian vowels in it, even her mismatched eyes. Not that he would look down on that anyway, given his own appearance. At the back of his mind, he started berating himself. He shouldn't be having these thoughts. She was with child. She was a newly made widow. She had a slave collar forced on her and probably suffered things no woman should. He swore he heard an old septon yelling, "Unclean!" In the booming voice in the back of his head. He violently quieted that voice down as well. He would never say anything like that to her, nor allow anyone else to say anything of the sort about her. She'd been through enough, but still, something about her grabbed his attention and wouldn't let it go. She turned her eyes back to him, relaxing a bit more, the purples and greens shining even more at him, though the green eye might be his favorite. His thoughts were halted when she winced in pain and grabbed at his shoulders tightly. "Is the pain back?" he asked in common. "Not my pan this time," she said with a wince, as she turned her head behind them. Lumi let out a small cry, and Aemond turned his head to look as well. The dragon was struggling. Her wings were starting to falter, and the uneven movements were making her flight uncontrollably shaky. He looked back to the growing mass at the waterline. He quickly made some calculations. "Tell your Lumi to glide on our tailwind. We're nearly there. See that island ahead of us? That's Dragonstone. She'll make it if she glides. Vhagar's tailwind can carry her. It's strong enough. We'll tow her in behind us." The girl nodded and closed her eyes, more than likely to talk to her dragon via the bond. As she did, he noticed something else. He didn't notice before because, well, her eyes. But there was a faint shine of a scar on her forehead. One aged and healed over by time. One kind of like his own. Only this one was in the shape of a lightning bolt. Unconsciously, his right hand went up, and he touched the scar with his thumb. Her eyes opened and blinked. He felt like he was caught doing something wrong. He stilled for a moment, wondering if he should apologize. When her one hand went up and touched his own scar in return. Only the scar. She skipped over his eye patch completely. Something warmer started burning deep in his chest at the gentle movement. She really was beautiful, in a way that was only hers. He would take her to Dragonstone. He would see her, and her dragon cared for and healed. He would put up with seeing his half-sister and her maiming children for as long as he needed to see it done. Then he would be the one to take her to King's Landing. He steeled his resolve. He wiped his face clear of any emotion. He mentally readied himself for the interactions to come. He would die before letting any amount weakness show or be caught off guard. Not while the blacks were watching. She was his responsibly now. His to guard and protect. Even in the house of his enemies. The small group stood waiting just inside the courtyard gate. The guards and men finished clearing out the last of the carts from the area in front of the gate, clearing the way for the very large arrival. Aegon even had his Sunfire move as well. Both him and Caraxes perched themselves on the dragon glass roofs nearby, watching while they sunned themselves. Tell the dragon keepers they can stay in the clearing. They can tend to the dragon here. We'll get a group of men to run them water, supplies, anything they need. The crown princess ordered. Her guard nodded, then ran out the gate and to the other side of the clearing to pass the message on. Rhaenyra turned her head to Luke, who was still gripping his mother's arm. Next to them Maester Gerardis and the two midwives. Jace, who had just run from bringing the dragon keepers, was standing next to them. Daemon was there as well, but he was pacing the gate, mumbling under his breath about chasing after the brat, and dare not betraying to and trick him. Even his wife was giving him a wide berth at the moment. Everyone could tell the Rouge Prince was far more than wound up and knew better to approach him just yet. Off to the side away from everyone else was Aegon, leaning against the wall, watching all the activity, seeming to be smirking at Daemon with no small amount of glee, giving pointed looks to Jace and Luke every few minutes as well. Is that him? Luke asked in a small voice, as the two dragons who had been getting closer and closer were now readying to land. Don't think it could be anything else, Jace replied, his voice controlled but his stance nervous. Both brothers with their throats clogged with guilt, nervousness, and more. They hadn't seen Aemond since Driftmark. They had tried to put their uncle and that event out of their mind as much as they could. Now, everything they had been ignoring and avoiding the past 5 years was catching up with them, including Aemond. A huge dust cloud resounded doom, followed by a less loud boom and more dust, was heard. Daemon, the maester, and a guard walked forward. They stood waiting, as a long rope was thrown over the side. There was a pause, then down the rope, with the arms and limbs of the girl still wrapped around him, descended Aemond. The guard and the maester ran out, and before long, the same two were rushing the girl into the White Tower. Aemond let them take her, then turned to speak to Daemon and the dragon keepers. After a few moments, he turned to follow after the new rider, but he froze in his tracks as he saw the two boys that standing at the gate. Tension and unease washed over the entire courtyard like a flood. The two shorter, dark-haired princes stared with uneasy eyes at the blonde-haired prince. Luce started to look even more ill as Jace looked back and forth with worry written on his face. Aemond began to glare heatedly at the two. Cold, chilling kind of glare. But he quickly snapped his head away from them and continued to follow guard and girl. A quick, pardons, princess to his half-sister was all that was spoken as he walked by. Luke stood still for just a moment, as his eyes watered. Then he broke away from his mother's arms and ran off, Aegon's short but cackling laugh following after him. Bring her in carefully, lay her on the new sheets. The water is boiling, we started the tea. No raspberry leaf. Boy, are you daft? The first thing we need to do is measure the belly. That will tell us how far along she is. Add more lemon balm, that's enough veil root. It's okay, sweetie. We're here to help, I promise we won't hurt you. The privacy screen, Barilla. The screen. One of the midwives quickly ran over and pulled the fabric screen shut as the other two started helping the young girl disrobe. Aemond and Daemon then stood alone on the other room, separated from girl and healers, both looking agitated but for different reasons. So, the dragon's name is Lumi and her wings were getting weak. Did the girl say anything else? Did she tell you anything about herself or her family? Daemon asked quickly. Her family is dead. She says the slavers killed them all. They left her and her husband for last, then killed him. She doesn't know how far along she is, and her name is Helamis Peveril. I know I've read that name somewhere before. Peveril? Demon said as he thought back to his own studies. I've heard the name as well. They are family from old Valyria. I thought they were all lost to the doom. Like all the rest, apparently there was a branch that had have been living in Volantis. Were they dragon riders as well? Very few were dragon riders, but Volantis makes sense, though the Paravel family were all mages. Pyromancy, blood magic, dragon magic, death magic. Every branch had the talent. Eamon's jaw nearly dropped. So, you mean her family practices magic? Real magic? I mean her family built the great mage tower of Valyria. They taught others magic. As soon as her feet touched the ground, she was ripped out of Eamon's arms and rushed away. She wanted to make sure Lumi landed safely behind Vagr. She swore she heard her land, but they moved her before she could look behind her. The large green dragon was quite the blockage. She was rushed off by a man in full armor and another man in grey robes into a tower. They got her into a private room, where 3 women and another man were already waiting. They had towels, wraps, and tons of other things all around them. The equivalent of medieval AE. Madame Pomfrey would have approved, if it wasn't for the ladies comforting her, telling her what they were doing next. She knows she would have panicked. They began poking her and pushing her the second she entered the room. They even put up a privacy screen between them and the princess? Before removing the jacket and what cloth she had on that was supposed to pass as clothes. It was when they undressed her and laid her on the bed that the real work started. One of the ladies took out a string and started measuring from the top of her baby bump to the bottom. The second lady started asking questions about her pain. How much pain, where at, was it a stinging pain or a sharp pain, ECT? The older man went to her other side and took her wrist, getting her pulse. They then checked to make sure she wasn't bleeding. She felt uncomfortable, not just from the fluffy of activity around her, but the unwanted hands touching her. She was not used it nor comfortable with it, but the ladies kept her calm and informed. Somehow knowing what the next step was and the reason for them helped her keep her nerves. When they were all done with the examination, they told her they were going to give her teas. Teas that would help relax her and stop preterm contractions. She was to stay in bed, eat as much as possible, and for a time would be prohibited from dragon riding. A dragon's cry from outside of the tower let her know that Lumi was nearby. She gave a deep sigh of relief she didn't know she had been holding. They were safe now. They were on solid ground, under care and being helped. She, Teddy, and Lumi would be fine now. She felt a bit of panic in her mind, followed by another cry. She quickly responded to her dragon through their bond. Safe. She spoke through the bond. We're safe. Let them help. I promise we're safe. She felt a grumble of disapproval from the other side of the bond, but then calm. Rhaenyra kept her distance and stayed behind the courtyard gate as the dragon keepers started to carefully approach the white dragon. A dragon who, after landing behind Vagr, that decided to rush her way over to the wall. Then sit at the foot of the healer's tower and cry, where her rider was being treated. Demon had been right in his assessment. The dragon needed food, water, and care urgently, gods forbid. She had never seen a dragon so ill-treated at this. It made her sick to her stomach and ill. This isn't supposed to happen to dragons, Jace said, with a heartbroken look. No, it's not, but it has happened, Rhaenyra said, then turned to oldest boy and heir. Zaldrizes Mary Issy Sevs Ixies Ia Turdor Run. She spoke those words in their mother tongue. A dragon alone in the world is a terrible thing. Jace's head nodded solemnly to his mother's words. He then looked to where his brother had run off. I'll go find Luke, Jace said, turning heel. Rhaenyra looked back to the white dragon. One braver dragon keeper among the lot stepped close and grabbed one of the chains on the leg, only to be met by a reproachful snapping of the jaws and a roar. Half of the dragon keepers, the younger half, started at that. One of the guards on the side started as well and dropped his metal shield on the ground. As the sound of the metal clashing, the white dragon shrieked from deep in her lungs. She pushed herself against the courtyard wall, with the white tower behind her. She furled her wings close to her, and tucked her tail between her legs. She was suddenly terrified yet again, and now looking at all the dragon keepers with fear, watching them each in turn, waiting and watching as if expected more pain. A clash of metal? Was that really all it took? Rhaenyra's heart was breaking. From the side of the gate, arms still crossed, was Aegon. Now taking out a half-empty wineskin he had snuck with him on his dragon. He scoffed. "That's not a dragon," he quipped as he took a deep sip, then wiped his mouth. "That's not a dragon at all. That is an overgrown, plucked chicken." The wide-eyed, open-mouthed, aghast look Rhaenyra gave Aegon at his words spoke volumes. "Luke! Luke!" Jace yelled. "Go away, go away, go away." Luke thought as he pulled his knees closer to him and shuffled himself back more. He didn't want to be found right now. Not by his brother, not by anyone. "I know you're around here," Jace said, sounding a bit further. "Go away, go away, go away, leave me alone." Luke stayed where he was, no answering, tucked behind an old suit of armor. "Not funny, Luke. I know this is one of your favorite places. You're here, and you have to come out now. Just go away, go away, go away." Luce placed his head on his knees and stayed completely still. He didn't want to come out. He didn't want to talk. He didn't want to be found. That's why he ran to this room in the first place. A random room in the drum tower that had paintings, a few suits of armor, and other decor that had not used for years, if not generations. Didn't Jace get it? He wanted to be alone. Luce then heard, and sort of felt, his brother sitting down a few feet from him. "Hey," Jace said. Luke just sighed. "So we saw him." "Yes," Luce said weakly. Jace waited for a beat, then nudged his brother with the end of his boot. "And?" the other brother said, waiting for Luce to talk. "It's gone, his eye is really gone," Luce said, not moving his face from his knees. "Yes, it is. And did you see him?" "Yes, he got tall. He got terrifying," Luke said in a small, barely heard voice. Jace just sat still, not really know what to say. "He hates me, doesn't he? I saw it in the way he looked at us. He hates me, and he's angry at both of us, maybe the girls and Jace moved closer and put his arm around him. "Things are never going to go back to the way they were, are they? We're never going to able to make it right, are we, Jace? Not now, not after all this time." "I don't know, Luke. I wish I could tell you. I really do. But I honestly don't know." Rhaenyra, "Oh, it's adorable." Metal sounds.
Lumi. Emoticon zdumienie goblin flashbacks.
Rhaenyra, "Oh, it's traumatized." Dusk was starting to creep over the waterline of Dragonstone by the time the Meisters and midwives exited the rooms. Aemond and Aegon were standing together, Aegon just as drunk as before, on the left side of the healer's room door. Rhaenyra and Daemon stood on the right, her hands folded over her belly, and Daemon looking like he had grown sick and tired of waiting hours ago. The air around the four was strange to say the least. Rhaenyra was trying her best not to look at Aemond, forcing whatever guilt she was feeling down, while at the same time constantly meeting eyes with Aegon. Aemond was ignoring her just as well, but was radiating rage, to an uncomfortable degree. One maid nearly ran away in fright. Whether it was just because of Aemond or because of the situation as a whole was anyone's guess. Daemon was a statue. He had been standing post, watching the door with the eyes of a wild cat, waiting to pounce on the first person out the door. His eyes were ready to freeze anyone in their tracks. He had done it twice with Aemond, silently reminding the younger man to keep his composure, but Aegon was pushing it. The oldest of the brothers was nearly chuckling with glee, looking back and forth from their half-sister to their estranged uncle, then back to Aemond. He was sucking down his wine, looking like a little kid waiting for the favorite part of a play to begin. It was obvious he was enjoying everyone else's discomfort far too much. So much he felt safe to grin and gloat without a word as he half hid behind his younger brother. It was an awkward stalemate, this mix of looking and not looking and outright staring. No one was willing to break the silence. When the door finally did open, Maester Gerardis and the midwives stepped out. The tension around them broke, if even just a little. "Well, how is she?" Daemon ordered before the man got all the way out the door. "We've managed," halted her contractions. "Her preterm labor has stopped for now. It took 3 teas and oils, but the child will not quicken today." Rhaenyra let out a loud sigh, and her hands unconsciously rubbed her own stomach. "She'll need to be on bed rest for at least 2 weeks. No traveling nor dragon riding, even as a passenger. Not until she gets stronger and can handle the stress. Short walks can be allowed, but only once or twice a day. And the child? Emond asked quickly without missing a beat. The Meister frowned openly at this. 28 weeks in term, I'd say. Far too soon to be born. In fact, we would need at least 8 more weeks before the child could survive outside its mother. Even that would come with its own set of problems. 12 weeks would be ideal. But, Demon demanded. The Meister held his tongue for just a moment, but he knew he had to tell them, even if it was not good news. Her body already tried to expel the babe. There is solid evidence to lead us to believe it will try to do so again. It is almost certain the child will be born early if her case follows in line with others. What can we do to lessen the chances? Rhaenyra asked. At this the midwives answered. Lean meats, fruit, and vegetables. The girl is famished. Fresh water. Tie a knot in every string, rope, or cord that enters the room she is in, to keep the baby tied to her. Keep her unstressed, well rested. We have a tea that can help as well, but she can only once every 3 days. One of those was the tea she got earlier, and we should put a symbol of the mother above her bed. Demon's eyes twitched, Rhaenyra's lips pursed, but Emond lightly nodded his head. And what of the mother's injures? Rhaenyra asked pointedly. The midwives all looked to the Meister for this one, sadness in their eyes. She's bruised and has cuts around her wrists and ankles from the chains, but nothing more. Some older, healed scars. One on her forehead. An old puncture wound on her upper right arm. Long scar on her left. Things along that line. All healed or will heal with time. But one dark look from Prince Demon, and the Meister immediately continued. I'm not so worried about her injuries. I am, however, very worried about her long-term health. She was starved, left without water for long spans of time, more than likely left to the extreme hots and colds of the islands. This mistreatment could have lasting effects. All the nutrition she has gotten recently would have gone straight to the babe. She'll need to replenish it. I suggest a regimen of milk, bone broth, iron pills. Get them. Start it as soon as possible. Demon snapped. The Meister nodded. Right away, my prince. With that, the Meister turned and headed straight up the stairs, to start collecting what he would need for the girl. The midwives walked over to Rhaenyra, and she took a few steps back for privacy. Is there anything else we should know? She asked softly. There was no bleeding, which is a blessing. She is scared but has decided to put her trust in us for now. Her ankles and wrists are freed now, but we are having difficulty getting the collar off. She wants her dragon. She is worried over her. Outside of answering our questions and asking after the babe, that's the only thing she'd talk about. She's sleeping now with the junior Meister watching over her. She'll probably sleep through till morn. Thank you. You are excused. The 3 midwives departed after that. Rhaenyra turned and looked to her 2 relatives, the hateful one eye staring back at her as Aegon grinned almost madly, looking back and forth. Rhaenyra then folded her hands over and spoke hesitantly. Well, the day is getting quite late. You should probably stay for the night. We can have rooms readied for you in the Stone Drum, and have dinner sent up. I believe we'll stay here in the White Tower. Thank you, Emond said abruptly. Aegon leaned forward a bit more so he could see them both, the manic gleam now shining brightly in his eyes. Rhaenyra's face fell at those words. Demon's slightly scrunched face might as well have had "what the fuck" written across it. Whatever do you mean? I mean, thank you kindly for your consideration, but we will stay here in the White Tower. They have rooms here, do they not? There are 2 right here besides Lady Peverell's room. They look empty. I believe we would all be much more comfortable if me and Aegon stay here in the tower. Rhaenyra's eye went wide at the unexpected rejection. Or was it a rejection? It was a no, that was for sure. But you'd prefer to stay here at the tower? For what reason? Rhaenyra spoke, a little affronted. A lone raised eyebrow from Emond gave his answer. Her jaw locked, and her hands fidgeted. But I stayed on him. While she hated to admit it, they did deserve to be wary. When the children had fought, it was Emond who lost his eye. Now that the emergency was over, the reality was starting wash over all of them. There was no trust between the two sides right now, hadn't been for years, and the distance, the 6 years of time that had passed, done nothing to heal it. Let's make this easy on us both. Aegon and I will stay here as guests of the tower. The Meisters and Septons share the tower, so it's considered part of the September holy ground, should never see bloodshed. So you can sleep better knowing your boys are safe, and I'll sleep better knowing they are far from me. Besides, we have our orders from the crown. We were to find the rider and dragon, then see them safely to King's Landing. It would make more sense for us to stay near our charge during her convalesce, would it not? Rhaenyra stood stock still, not really knowing how to react. As Aegon looked seconds away from dancing or gigging in amusement, she didn't think her face would betray her uncomfortableness, and she didn't like the way Aemond had put things, but she also didn't have the words to refute him. She did want to keep them away from her boys. She was still coming around to the thought that 2 Greens were here, on her island, let alone the thought of bringing them into the drum itself. She was going to tell them to avoid one another and add a guard to follow her brothers, make sure they didn't harm her boys. The threat of possible vengeance worrying her. But she also knew this was a larger risk for them. They were on her island under her command. They definitely had no allies here, but Aemond had also just given her a way out. A valid excuse. The White Tower was a part of the September holy ground, was sacred. No one would dare spill blood here, let alone try kinslaying. On either side, unless they wanted the faith, the gods, and the people to despise them. The order was perfect excuse if anyone was to ask why they were not given rooms in the drum, as well as keeping the guest right. Both sides would be able to sleep better. Rhaenyra sighed. Very well. We'll have the linens in these 2 rooms freshened for you and have a fire started in the fireplaces. Supper will be sent to all of you as soon as it's ready. Thank you very much, Your Highness. Aemond couldn't help but notice the slightly impressed look on Daemon's face. Rhaenyra. Well, if you must stay overnight, Aemond. Sanctuary. Rhaenyra. Pardon. Huh? Aemond, I said. Sanctuary. I ain't going nowhere. Not without my girl. Try me.
Rhaenyra. Oh.
Daemon. You clever son of a bitch. Aemond walked into the healing room, quickly making his way over to her. One maid and the junior maester were the only ones there. She was emptying a basin, and he was cleaning up the room now that all the activity was done. Aemond swiftly snatched open the curtains that separated the 2 parts of the room, urgently wanting to see for himself that she was well. His lone eye only softened only once he watched her chest rise and fall, breathing softly in her sleep. She was laying in the very middle of the bed and seemed to be well into her rest. Her hair had been quickly braided to the side to keep it out of the way, by one of the midwives, he guessed. Her hands were folded over the top of her belly. Her blankets seemed to be the only thing that were covering her, as her shoulders and neck were bare. A bit of anger and frustration raised in his chest at that. She needs a nightgown for now, and other clothing for the morrow. She is uncovered and without, he said to the attending maid in firm tone. She turned to look at the girl for a moment, before her eyes widened in realization. Right away, my prince? She bowed quickly before rushing out. How it hadn't occurred to them before, Aemond would never know. Had they been planning on leaving her in that state? Oh no. Not to his charge, they were not. He would make sure she was properly cared for and had what she needed. He took a quick look around the room, noting a few things. He turned and walked to the door, opening in to see 2 servants nearby. She needs a fresh basin, a pitcher of water, and 2 more blankets. Can you see to that? Yes, my prince, right away. He now felt assured her needs would be seen to. He went back to her side, sitting down on the bed next to her, right next to her hip. He couldn't stop himself from pausing just to look at her face, at the bump, even at the sickening collar. Before he had even realized it, his hand was reaching out. He placed it softly on the swell of her belly, the very top. When Hylyanna was pregnant with her twins, he had done the same. The 2 seemed to kick and wake one another up constantly, keeping one another active. He could always expect a kick, punch, or something else. As he put his hand on Haelymes's belly, He hoped to feel movement from this little one as well. He believed she referred to the babe as a boy. Did she somehow know? Or was it just a gut feeling or guess? If she held magic like her family was rumored to, it might be possible. He'd ask her when she woke. For now, he would just wonder, and his eyes remained trained on the babe. What a surprise you are, little one. Both you and your mother Eamon spoke lowly, unconsciously leaning closer to speak to the bump. We had no idea either of you were out there. Things would have been different if we had. But we know now. You're both safe now. No one will dare try to harm either of you now that we're aware, Eamon said, his thumb now brushing the blanket softly, almost petting the belly. He felt a shift under his hand, and knew it was the babe. He froze for a moment, keeping his hands still, wondering if he would feel the child move again. A chuckle from his left side caught his ear, and his head snapped over. Aegon was leaning against the wall a few feet away, smirking. Eamon's face fell instantly at the sight of him. Sorry, did I interrupt some bonding time? Aegon quipped, and Eamon glared. He removed his hand from Halami's belly. Do not sneak up on my blind side. Eamon bit at his brother. Using your blind side is the only way one can sneak up on you. Aegon deadpanned. Eamon's glare narrowed, but he wouldn't refute the claim, or the small glow of pride. She is a beauty. I'll give her that, and she comes with a dragon. Not much of a dragon, but a dragon nonetheless, Aegon said offhandedly. Eamon immediately felt his hackles raise. And what's that supposed to mean? Eamon near growled in his low, articulate voice, his lone eye now shooting fire at his older brother. Nothing. Nothing at all. Night, brother. The loud crashing, breaking, and smashing of items was now over. The floor, the wall, and the fireplace were littered with debris. Broken glass and porcelain mostly, with 2 or 3 clay busts also destroyed. The fireplace was smoky and blazing from the extra items it was now burning. Demon had now exhausted himself and was sat on his knees in front of the fireplace. His beef now leveling out as his blood and temper cooled, as he looked into the flames and smoke. The rage had been holding back, that itching and burning under his skin for hours. He had let it out, and now he could think clearly. The first question he asked himself, what the fuck had been happening on the other side of the narrow sea? An entire Valyrian family had been captured, then slain. Murdered in cold blood by fucking slavers. Their line nearly wiped from existence. A dragon chained and tortured, nearly broken. A single girl near the same age as his own twin daughters. Now the last of her line, alone yet pregnant, having been bred like cattle. Both not even fed nor given them enough water. Even as the girl grew, the child. A child they were planning to take from her in the end anyway, having to escaping on her own. Because no one here even knew what was anything happening to her. Things like this should never happen. Not to dragons. Not to Valyrians. It was wrong. So unbelievably wrong. These were crimes, sickening crimes. Crimes against ancient blood, against humanity, against fucking nature itself. And what burned him even more, those bastards were still fucking out there. Eating, drinking, going about their pathetic lives unpunished. All without a care. Oh no. Oh no, that would not do. He knew from the moment he laid eyes on the dragon. Someone would pay for it. After just looking at that girl, the girl with eyes so similar to his mother's, he got up and near ran to his desk. He would send a raven straight away to his brother. Then one to Corlys. He had a few to his contacts in Pentos, Bravos, and some old soldiers he knew were now living near Slaver's Bay. He would contact Misery as well. She also had contacts across the narrow sea. He would use them, find out who and where those people were, as well as how the slavers had managed to hatch an egg, what they were planning to do with the dragon, girl, and babe once it was born. Were they going to sell the girl and dragon, their serfs? Or wait and raise the boy, kill the girl, and hope he bonded with the dragon? Who would buy them? Who would have the funds to buy them? Who would risk be buying them? The Dornish? The Braavosi? The Triarchy? It was time to shine to light on what had been happening behind their backs. He needed to know so he could be the one to make this right. He would lead this raid and watch these fuckers burn with his own eyes. They thought they could inflict this amount of damage and pain and not suffer the consequences. Did they think their actions would go undiscovered forever?
No, no, no.
They would burn for this. He would see to it himself. Demon knew of them now. He would find them. He would put faces and names to the sick fucks who committed these crimes. He would make them suffer so much, the rest of the world would hear of it and never try anything of this sort ever again. Off to the side, having quietly watched from the slightly open door, was the crown princess. She had waited a few moments after his rage had ended to check on him, now seeing him at the desk, seemingly well and no longer in a dragon's fury. Rhaenyra almost let out a sigh of relief, until she saw the gleam in his eye as he rapidly wrote his letters. She watched for a moment, before her own eyes hardened just like his, her hand protectively gripping at her own belly, her own dragon fire burning behind her throat and heart. She then quietly closed the Solar's door. She'd wait for him in their shared bedroom. They would talk then. Demon. Planning more war crimes in private. Rhaenyra. And I ain't seen a damn thing. Demon sent off his letters and ravens with the maesters before heading to his bed and his wife. They talked for maybe half an hour before the sand hit their eyes. Husband and wife were on the same page on the matter of seeking justice. For the girl and for her fallen family. That was all that mattered to Demon at the moment. In the morning when they woke, they were greeted by ravens of their own from King's Landing. One asking after the two princes now roomed in the White Tower. The second near demanding their return if they were there. He decided he'd let Rhaenyra handle that reply later. It was obvious they had yet to read what he had sent just 7 hours ago. They would already know the boys were here. Demon's temper had been tried enough the past day and a half. Breakfast followed, and it was a strange affair. Luke and Jace looked frazzled. Luce, nearly in tears the entire time with his head down. Jace looking half confused, half guilty. Their eyes darting to the door every few moments, as if expecting Aemon to burst though at any moment. Rena was also unhappy and worried. Not sad nor angry, just concerned. But Bela was the oddest. She looked half infuriated, half anxious. Her eyes went to the door even more than the boys. Demon wasn't sure why the two heirs could handle themselves. Well, maybe Luke would need help. Rhaenyra seemed to pick up on it. Just so you all know, Aemond and Aegon will not be joining us. They are here as guests of the White Tower for the duration of their stay. It was only after that Luke and Jace seemed to relax. Demon's eyes stayed on his daughters and the strange look they gave to one another. He knew his girls. And he knew that wasn't like them. What in the seven hells was going on with them? And how long will they be staying? Prince Aemond has orders from the crown. The girl is his charge. He intends to honor his orders. So, he will be staying until he can escort the girl and her dragon to King's Landings himself. It will be 2 weeks at the very least. Aegon requested his wineskin be refilled for his flight home after lunch. Don't worry, both will be watched. Carefully. The girl's wide worried eyes once again caught Demon's attention. The fact that Jace also added his own look to the mix. He met the eyes of the twins, with guilt and worry. Demon's eyes narrowed. He'd been a father long enough to know when something was not right. And something was definitely not right here. Aemond had stayed in Halemy's room for few hours after eating dinner. He woke up to maids bringing in breakfast, and after eating went back to her room. Aegon was passed out, starfished on his bed. Every time Aemond checked on him, he did not like being away from them, nor having them out of his sight. Not here, not on Dragonstone. Aegon, the sheep with dragon's color, seemed like he could have cared less. Aemond wondered if his older brother had any situational awareness, or sense of self-preservation at all for that matter. Aemond wasn't an idiot. He knew Rhaenyra and Daemon were having them watched. Every move would be reported post-haste. The guards had been doubled overnight. The maids were far too alert and watching every move. He also noticed Ser Good, the King's Guard, stopping by over and over. King's Guards were not really needed nor normally stationed near the White Tower. Well, let them. Maybe he'd have some fun with it later. But right now he could only feel aggravation at their newly appointed shadows. He sat in the chair facing her as the girl was starting to wake. She had woken, moved slightly, then fallen back asleep. Now she was stirring more and more, and the time she stayed in between sleeping were less and less. He was sure that she would be fully awake and aware soon. When he saw her moving again, this time with more purpose, he got up from his chair and walked to the bed. He sat on mattress on her right side. Soon, her purple and green eyes fluttered open, and she turned to him, in a half-dazed and half-dreamy state. "Good morning, Lady Peveril." A warm, sweet smile beamed up to him. She wiped the sleep from her eyes with one hand, as her other hand went to her belly, assuring herself the child was still there. Their first 2 days on Dragonstone were odd and broken up into different tasks. Aegon did leave after lunch to return to King's Landing. Aemond written a letter before then to take with him to his mother. He was somehow not surprised the coward took of the first chance he got. But being left behind on his own not only stung, but was infuriating. He stuck to his charge's side, kept a sharp eye on every guard and maid that came near them. Helamis stayed in bed most of the time, under the watch of midwife and maester. But she still took her 2 walks that she was allowed. One earlier in the day after breakfast, then other afore dinner. Both of those walks had started by going straight to the gate to the waiting Lumi. Lumi refused to be far from the tower where her rider was. She had, in fact, curled up and sleep on the other side of the tower wall the entire night. She also stayed walking beside her or behind her during her walks. Aemond had never seen a dragon more attached to his rider. Aegon and Sunfire were always very close. He and Vhagar were independent creatures on their own. But they enjoyed the company of one another more than any other. These two, though they had been through darknesses and fire together, and it showed. They worried over one another and cared for one another. The dragon keepers had managed to get the chains off of the white dragon's legs and wings, but she had refused to let them do anything else. Only when Helamis was there did Lumi let the dragon keepers treat her wounds, or even eat a full meal. The removing of the chains from around her neck, though, that would have to wait. Lumi would let them nowhere near her neck. The flesh was far too red and raw. Some were semi-embedded into the skin itself. Helamis would near burst into tears and become frantic at the first pained cry of her poor girl. None on Dragonstone. Not royal, dragon keeper nor maester was willing to distress the dragon or the expectant mother any more than necessary. They would have to come up with a different plan to remove those chains, and quickly. The maesters and dragon keepers brainstormed with Helamis and Aemond. Soon the idea to use a numbing herb to coat the area before removal was fine-tuned. Then it was greenlit by the Crown Princess. An order for about 10 pounds of the herb was sent to Spicetown by Raven. It would be arriving from Driftmark in the next day or so. The rest of the day was spent in relative rest and peace. He stayed by her side, while avoiding his sister, her spawn, and anyone else on Dragonstone he did not wish to see. Except, of course, Daemon, who always made himself the exception. They were just returning from Helamis' after-breakfast walk when the Rouge Prince made his presences known. Full to the brim with both questions and insults. Chapter 17. Chapter Summary. Letters and Dragons. Okay, I did rewrite the first part a bit, but I hated the second part. So I took that out completely. I was not happy with some of the creative choices I made with it, and not gonna lie, still kind of struggling with getting from here to the next arc. I added a dragon POV in and will go forward without the second part for now. We'll be moving to the discovery phase in the next chapter, and the healing phase will be going on with it. Dragons of a different scale. Aemond was not welcome here at Dragonstone, and definitely not trusted. The guard's loyalty to his half-sister wasn't afraid to let it show. Glares standing directly in his path, and a near-shoulder check Aemond had avoided by being quick on his feet were proof enough of that. They felt bold enough to do that here on Dragonstone. Even to a prince for their Rhaenyra. It would have been better for Lady Paravel and him if they had kept a respectable distance away from them, but they did not. He noted every offense, but for now he ignored it. He was sure his half-sister would do nothing about it. Just like she did nothing when her sons were the aggressors most of his childhood. They had been escorted down the waves by the same number of swords that filled the White Tower. He found himself both insulted and flattered by that. The scarred white dragon following their steps also made her chuckle. The guards behaved more when Lumi or Vagger was near, he had noticed. Once they re-entered the tower did it become only one king's guard and himself. Emond preferred it that way. Halamis seemed to be more uncomfortable when more people were around. While the guards were on edge because of him, she didn't know that. She could sense the unsettling atmosphere between him and the guards, however. It didn't help her nerves at all. As soon as they walked into the healing room, they saw that Prince Demon was already there, seated on an overstuffed chair, lounging lazily, with a bored expression on his face. Here I thought you had lost an eye, not a leg. With how slow that walk was, I have to wonder. Emond's heckles instantly raised at the cruel barb. It was the gentle hand that joined his arm that calmed him. We were walking slowly for Lumi. Sweet girl is slow on the ground. Halamis replied, taking the blame onto herself. Well, glad you got your fresh air. But now I think we need to talk about some important things, he said, switching to Valyrian. Halamis gave a long sigh and steeled herself. She known this was coming. She was awake and rested now. At least they gave her a day before they descended on her. She made her way over to her bed and sat down facing Demon. Emond had walked with her, only letting her arm free as she seated herself. She shifted nervously, turning gray at the idea of having to answer the questions that were coming. Her eyes were turned to the ground, then didn't move. Demon noted how much smaller and younger she looked as she sat there against the rest of the room. Very well, Prince Demon. What do you wish to know? You said they took you and your family from Volantis, correct? I need to know what you remember from the night they took you. Who took you, why they took you, where they took you after that. Most importantly, the place you were last, where you escaped from. Every detail could be important. She tightened her grip on her chemise and robe out of reflex. One of the newer gowns the maids had found for her to wear. Donated by Rhaenyra herself, she heard. A maturity chemise to accommodate her growing stomach. Demon's lip turned slightly more to a frown as he noticed her reaction. He was about to tell her it could wait for a moment if she needed a drink or tea first. But before he could, she started answering. My family lived in Volantis, yes. We stayed on the island all our life. We tended to a special farm our family owned for generations. My mother was a midwife, her sister an herbalist. Father sold the plants, herbs, and poisonous greenery that our farm grew, both common and rare. He had a talent for it. She breathed in deep, shoving all her emotions down as they tried to rise in her chest. She had to swallow it and finish answering the questions to Halamis. The words were like filth as they came out, dirtying everything and making her feel sicker and sicker as they poured out. She finally looks up to Demon, this time with a flat, gray-rocked look in her eyes as she continued. The slavers broke into our farmhouse at night. 3 broke in the front door, 3 through the back. They also had people watching the windows and sides of the house, in case someone tried to escape from them. So maybe 10 altogether, I'd guess. Emond's face went flatter, his eye widening a little as he and Demon listened to her. They kept their silence, not wanting to interrupt her or accidentally make her stop talking. One of the people at the window killed my aunt. They stabbed her in the back as she was trying to climb out. They called the man Scully. They killed my father next. He was the one fighting them the hardest. They called the one that killed him Captain. He was wearing much nicer clothes than all the others. He had a beard, red hair, angry black eyes. She stopped herself for a moment. She wrung her hands with the fabric of her chemise and robe, shook her head, then continued along. They took the 3 of us away. Mother, me, and my husband. They left the farm as it was, even the plants, everything but some gold and valuables we had. They took that, of course. Demon sat forward more now, listening in earnest. So, they must have targeted your family. They knew who you were and what you were and where you were. They targeted your family. Who was your husband, by the way? If you don't mind me asked. Emond's fist clenched dangerously under his jacket sleeve. Lavar, an older male cousin, by a few name days, son of my aunt and late uncle. He was a Paravel just like me, the only boy in the family. Good to know. Can you tell me what happened? After the farm, They forced us onto a ship and brought us to another island. They took us from the ship, straight underground, a wide and deep cave. They had Lumi there already, chained and scared. They had kept her there since she was hatched. They didn't really let her out of the cave at all, not even to fly. They brought us to her. They locked us in an iron cage beside her. After a few days later, they tried to force us to bond with her. My husband and mother couldn't. I did. Helamis closed her mouth, and tears started to gather. She was wringing her hands harsher now. That did not escape Eamon's eyes as he noticed how she was reacting. I didn't hear the names of a lot of people. The names of the people I did hear that were in the cave were Callias, Girona, Helios. They were with two women called Dahlia and Hiva. Demon's eyes sharpened as he heard these names. Those women's names are Lysian names, Demon said, slipping back into common.
Lys.
Was it the island of Lys? He demanded hurriedly. I do not know. It was then her knuckles turned white and her breathing started to sharpen. They did say once that if Mother didn't bond with the dragon, they would sell her to a nearby pleasure garden. Lys, then. That had to have been Lys. It might have been. I could not be sure. Are there any other names or details your reminder? Anything at all? Merryweather. The name of the ship they took us on was called the Merryweather. That's enough, Eamon stated firmly, as his head snapped from Helamis to Demon. She's given plenty. Your interrogation ends here. You can try again tomorrow if she's up to it. Demon's eyes snapped to Eamon. And who are you to stop me from talking to her? You're the crown prince consort. I'm well aware, just as I am aware that she is my charge, not yours. That means she is under my care and protection. Demon was on his feet in one moment, and in Eamon's face the next. And yet I still outrank you, Tauba. Eamon forced himself to stay calm, kept his back straight, and smiled just a little at Demon, even though he knew that would infuriate him. Higher rank or not, that won't change the fact she is my charge. That means I have final say in her care, and I say she's pregnant, and you are distressing her. We're done for the day. I'm getting her settled back in bed. Feel free to return in the morning.
No.
She yelled in common from her spot on the bed. Demon's eyes went to Helamis as he took a look at the state she was in. He had wanted the information, but he couldn't deny she was looking more unwell than she was when entered. Frustration was clashing with sympathy. He turned back. Fine. Tomorrow. Lumi hated it when her human was out of sight. It reminded her of being locked underground, stuck protecting vaults and gold that were never her own, being fed next to nothing, being hurt every time anyone came near, being lonely, being ever so lonely, by herself all the time, night after night. Only night because there was no day underground. But her human changed that. Her human freed her, saved her. In return, Lumi broke them free from the bank and stayed with her. Her human never sent her away, not once. Her humans showed her many pretty places and many pretty things by sharing memories with her. 2. Her human not only helped her find food but let her eat as much as she wanted. Her human was strong too. Her human had taken down many enemies and killed the Dark Lord. Lumi had burned and eaten well right beside her, because Lumi was a good dragon. Lumi would protect her human from other sparkly humans and giants and spiders. Lumo even kept her safe from the other dragons. Lumi kept her safe in the small cave, even if it was a bit foolish because she was little and weakened. She did it without worry, because Lumi was a good dragon, the best dragon. Her human even said so. She was going to protect her and the soon baby always, just like the glowing not humans asked her to before they came to this new place. It smelled better here, felt better here, but she couldn't protect her if she couldn't see her, if she wasn't near. When they were traveling, her human would stay in the movable cloth cave. It was small, she could see her human and smell her too. When they were traveling, she would ride on her back and would curl up next to her side and sleep too. Lumi could see her or she'd be right next to her. But Lumi couldn't see her when she went into the tower on the other side of the wall. Lumi couldn't smell her much either. It was just like when the bad humans took her human after the battle was over. Lumi got chained again, and she didn't see her human again until they were falling together in the air. Lumi didn't like it. The bad metal men took her into the tower before she landed behind the ancient green dragon. She didn't have time to burn them or stop them. Then when the bad metal men brought her out, they always took her away again. Back into the tower. Lumi didn't know how to tell them to stop taking her. She needed her nearby. She needed to protect her and the Soon baby. She couldn't do if they kept taking human away. Lumi wanted to scare the metal men instead. Maybe burn them. It would serve them right. They were bad and would have to learn. They kept her human behind the wall and in the tower away from her. Like bad sparkle humans. But Lumi had been a good dragon and didn't burn them. She had been very nice to them when her human was there, too. She let them take the chains off of her and put weird stuff on her cuts and scars, even if it itched. But even good dragons have limits. She was not happy with the other humans. Except maybe the ancient Green's human. He brought her human back to her 2 times a day. He stayed with them the whole time. He walked with them because Lumi had been on the ground for so long. She couldn't fly far. He came and talked to her when he came to see ancient green dragon, too. Even the adult red dragon's human didn't do that. But Lumi didn't like older red dragon or his human much anyway. And it seemed he liked her human too. He had a scar, she saw, so he must be a fighter. Just like his dragon. Lumi wondered, the ancient green dragon must have had a nest here, because she only spent a few hours by the castle with her human. Then the rest of the time sleeping. She must have a nest here to sleep in. So the next time they had a walk, and she saw ancient green dragon, Lumi waiting until they walked back into the tower, then spoke to ancient green dragon in the way dragons do. With growls, burst of air through the nose and mouth, and movements of the head, wings and tail. Green human strong? Green human fighter. Ancient green lifted her head at this and looked at Lumi confusedly. Yes, green human is strong. Green human fierce. Green human true dragon's blood. Reason I pick green human. Green human good mate for Lumi human? Lumi asked. The ancient green dragon tilted her head at that, before lifting her left wing. Lumi human have belly babe. Lumi human have mate? Yes, Lumi human have mate no longer.
No mate?
Need mate, the green dragon said as she shifted indignantly. Take turns guarding nest. Bringing meat. Egg hatch young come. Need watch. Care. Teaching. Eater nearby on island. Dangerous. Young needs safe. Lumi chirped and shaked her head in agreement. Green human walk with Lumi human. Green human go with Lumi human. Green human brings back from White Tower. Green human like Lumi human. Green human good human. Strong human. He bring Lumi human back safe every time. Green human like Lumi human more than others. Green human have nest. Green human have biggest red nest. Nest built by green first human and her mate, and first human son. Great red mountain built with 3 hills. Nest is biggest hill. Vagar said, insulted and defensive on her rider's behalf. Biggest hill? Best nest then, yes, best nest. Vagar said firmly. Lumi like if green hunt take Lumi human to red nest. Lumi human need mate. Green human make good mate. Green humans make best mate. Green human strong. Good hunter. Always food. Young safe. You see, Lumi. My human needs a mate. Is your human single? Vagar. My human is single, strong, and seems to like her. That could work Lumi. Do he have a nest, thou? Vagar. Do he have a nest? Allison's breath got caught in her lungs. She felt near to passing out with rib cage feeling like a corset had been tied far too tight around her. Someone brought a chair behind her, tried to push her gently into it. She collapsed harshly into the cushion. Her son was alone on Dragonstone. Her Emond, who already lost an eye to Rhaenyra and her sons, was there, alone. There, alone, defenseless with Demon, those boys, all the guards, all those enemy dragons. You left him there? Otto burst at Aegon from across the table. You left him there? On the island? Alone? Your younger brother. The rider of Vagar. The one most loyal to you. The one person that can ensure the throne goes to you. And you left him? Alone? For them to murder whenever they please. Aegon started gapping like a fish. his eyes wide and unregistering. Hyliana had her hands to her heart and took 2 steps towards the door from the volume of the yelling. "What in the 7 hells were you thinking? Go get him back," Allison said in a low crackling voice. Otto and Aegon both turned to her instantly. "Get your brother back. Go get him, go and retrieve him now. Before they hurt him or before he loses his temper or—" She stopped as she took in a gasp of air and grabbed her chest. Gods! Her heart was now pulling itself apart in her chest. "We can't send Aegon to retrieve Aemond. Not now that he's back. We can't risk him going back, getting captured or killed as well. It's not that bad. He's fine, he's alive. He has been taken in as a guest of the White Tower. For the gods' sake, that won't cover him for long. Not from Daemon. That man is a heathen. The laws of gods and men hold no weight with him. He will murder your brother the second he can find an excuse. It was your order that sent us there," argued weakly, but loudly. "An order to return here. You were never told to land on Dragonstone. You were never told to stay overnight. And you were definitely not told to leave your brother behind. By himself and unprotected. What were you thinking, you fool? Stop it. Both of you. Just stop it." Allison screamed shrilly, panic overwhelming her voice. Hyliana's eyes looked up and blinked widely at her mother, glassy as if not really seeing her. "I don't care who goes. I don't care if they go by dragon or boat or horse. I want my son back. We know what Aemond is, we know what Daemon is, we know what could happen. I want him out of their clutches, back home safe. And I want it done now," Allison said, her eyes watery, but her words firm. Hyliana blinked, then turned around and walked out of the room, leaving the noise and screaming behind her. She didn't like the fighting. She didn't like the screaming. She couldn't tolerate it, so she decided to excuse herself quietly. She knew Aemond wouldn't come home. Not yet. He wouldn't return unless it was with the Lady of Light. On the other hand, she could go to Dragonstone herself and tell him Mother was distressed. She should bring him his clothes and his medical case for his eye, too. He would need them. Maybe she could even bring letters back and forth for them. Dreamfire would enjoy the trips, she was sure. Yes, she thought to herself as she turned to Aemond's room, already thinking of what to pack him. Yes, that could work. That could work out very well. Aemond moved from standing at the foot of the bed to walking closer to the door before turning once again. He was pacing more today. He had very little to do with his energy here, as the White Tower had no training yard of its own. The guards going in and out as they pleased kept him on high alert as well. It wasn't bad now, but Aemond knew himself. He would start getting very restless very soon. "What is that thing they put above my bed, anyway?" Helamis asked. She was lying flat, looking straight up at the strange wooden craving. It sort of resembled the form a female-like figure cradling what was either a blob, a belly, or a babe. "That is the symbol of the mother," he spoke after he turned to look at it. "She is an aspect of the one that is 7. When the 7 split themselves, she took on the duties of watching over women, as well as children and pregnancies, also giving mercy and granting forgiveness. They brought it in for you and the babe." Helamis blinked and sat up more in bed, her eyes showing disbelief with hint of upset. "Really? Why did they place it above the bed? In hopes that it will hinder any miscarriage. That's also why they untied all the drapes and curtains. I mean, and I don't mean this to be rude, did they not have a symbol for malaise they could have put up?" Aemond fought back the voice in the back of his head that sounded like that old septon, screaming blasphemy at the top of his lungs. He knew where she was coming from. She had been raised near the black walls of Volantis. The 14 flames were still praised there. "We can ask for one to replace it, if you like." "Please do." She once again looked up at it, then turned back. "I know this will sound strange, but now that I know it belongs to another goddess it just—" Helamis took a deep breath. "It just feels wrong. I wouldn't feel right keeping it. Malaise is my matron." Suddenly an idea came to Aemond, one that seemed near perfect to him. "There is a temple dedicated to the 14 here. If you like, we can ask for permission to go there on your morning walk," he said, slipping into common. Helamis smiled brightly as she sat up, looking more energetic and alive than she had in the longest time. Could we? Love to see tempo of 14 here. I lit candle for gods. Pray to them. Thank them for giving me and babe second chance, she replied. He couldn't find her speech adorable. I'll ask right away. I'd be happy to take you, Eamon said, walking to the door. He saw no reason for Rhaenyra to refuse them, but she may say no anyway. Best to ask before leaving the White Tower, even if it was a short distance and for a short while. Well, at least the Tauba asked properly, Daemon commented dryly, as both her and Rhaenyra looked to the guard Aemond had sent as a messenger. Tell Prince Aemond he had leave to take the Lady Perival to the temple. If she and him wish to visit the temple in the future, they just need to give an hour notice, to protect her boys from running into him while visiting themselves. The guard bowed and left to deliver the princess's reply. Daemon turned back to Rhaenyra. I didn't think the boy gave two thoughts about the 14 flames. I always assumed he had the 7-pointed star braided on him at birth. Rhaenyra chuckled at the joke. Honestly, it's a surprise to me. Too, maybe he's just escorting her? Or maybe he might be more of a dragon than we believed. Daemon said, recalling the way the young prince handled himself and his dragon on that rocky beach. Well, there is only one way to find out, Rhaenyra said, a mischievous smile crossing her lips, a smile that was returned by her husband. To the temple then, my love. A bard and an artisan quietly snuck their way out of the courtyard gate, making their way onto the dirt and pebble clearing beyond the courtyard. One with his scratch pad and charcoal pencil in his hand, the other with a few blank music sheets and inkpen. You sure you heard right? Yes, the guard and the butcher both said you could see her from her window, right outside the gates, and they say she's gorgeous. Only a few have seen her. The princess and the prince have all but ordered everyone to stay away. Only staff is allowed to see her, and the one eye never leaves her side. Even better fuel for a song, don't you think? The artist crooned, dangling his words like a carrot. The songwriter went to open his mouth to protest, but didn't say anything. She's a dragon rider that popped out of nowhere. Mate, she's bound to have that Valyrian beauty. She's going down in the history books already. Songs are going to be written about her. Paintings and murals and wood carvings galore. We might as well be the first to make them. Get a jump before anyone else, the artist said, adding honey to his voice. But if we get caught? If the crown princess and princes don't like it? The bard breathed, looking around as if Rhaenyra, Daemon or Aemond were going to jump out at them at any moment. They hadn't given an order that excludes it. Now come on. While the dragon is still eating, there is gold to be made, my friend. Let's go make it. The two started to tiptoe to the tree line, where they could sit without the guards spotting them too easily. Over on another part of the clearly, the white dragon they were trying to avoid was finishing her 3 fattened pigs. All 3 that had been given grains, veggies, and more before being brought out to help nourish the dragon. Prince Aemon's idea, from what they heard. Pigs would eat nearly everything. They sat themselves down and watched at the window in the White Tower by the wall. Nothing happened for a few minutes. Not until the white dragon had finished her last pig and headed back to White Tower. After she returned, and gave a soft, low rumble to the window. Soon afterwards, the girl finally appeared. She sat on the window ledge, looking down at her mount, who was now crooning and calling to her, wrapped in a white robe over a white chemise. Her silver hair pulled all to her left side, falling in waves. She called out a talk to her dragon as it sat on its hind legs, swishing her tail as it looked up happily at her rider. A rider who moved her hand to cradle her swollen belly. Both the artisan and the bard eyes snapped to one another at the same time. She's with child? Get drawing. Get drawing. The princess had given permission and has talked to the high priest here on Dragonstone. He'll be more than happy to have a private service today, at the hour of the sun. Aemon's smile lifted a little, even if didn't make it to a full smile. Give the high priest our thanks and assume him we will be there, Aemon said, as he turned to look at the Lady Peveril. She was sitting at the window, talking sweetly down to her dragon, who was, as always, at the foot of the tower or just outside the gate. He looked at her, cratering her belly, as she praised and complimented her dragon. smiling and beaming down at her. "We have permission, Lady Paravel. We'll go in 2 hours, it's not that far a walk." Helamis turns and smiles to Emond. The Dragonstone Temple, near a perfect example of Valerian architecture, was just as breathtaking as Helamis hoped it would be. The red and black dragon glass on the walls that were thinned just right and in just the perfect place to let colored light in. The arches and pillars went up in a twisting, almost flowing way. 5 statues lined up on the left wall with another 5 on the right, with 4 towering main statues standing guard on the back, all with faces looking forward to the front entrance. The way the dragon glass let the sunlight shimmer down, the way the pillars of candles were placed perfectly with the statues. She was in utter awe. Helamis wondered if this was how the ancient Romans felt when they walked into one of their temples. "This place is more beautiful than I imagined," she said, turning to Emond. He had a sort of shell-shocked look himself. "Yes, it truly is," he said, turning to her. "It was made on the orders of Dinis the Dreamer, right after her and her father took up residence here. It was made in the same style as the great temple at the foot of Volcano Balearian. It took decades to make Dragonstone, but the temple was smaller and easier, so it was completed first, even with the pyromancers taking care to make the dragon glass walls perfect. So, the temple was completed before the doom happened then? I believe it was quite a few years after the Targaryens left that the doom occurred. I believe so. They also say that she and Gaemon, her husband, even lived here for some time." Emond added as his head nodded to the back of the temple. That seemed to be the same size, if not double the size of the main temple room. "I believe it. If my home wasn't complete, but I had this beautiful building nearby, I would have lived here as well." She turns and smiles at him. "What better way to live than to be closer to your gods?" Was his only reply. Inside, though, his heart had skipped a little at her words. He was still taking in every little bit of the temple he could with his lone eye. He had always been hungry for any link to his Targaryen blood, and now he felt like he was drinking his fill from the spring. Helamis' eyes, though, turned to look over to a corner of the room, to an out-of-place tapestry. It was pulled all the way down to the ground, unlike the others that were all a few feet above ground. Looking only slightly out of place, it wasn't right near the statue of the god Sirak. She raised a pale eyebrow, wondering who Daemon, and more than likely his wife, thought they were fooling. An idea then came to her, and she stopped herself from smiling. The 14 wanted her to work on repairing House Targaryen. Did they not? They never said how she should go about it. If they wanted to ease the drop, she'd give them something to overhear. Something that, hopefully, would make everyone think very hard. She turned back to Emond, holding onto his arm a little more, as she started leading the conversation. "So, tell me, my prince, do you pray to the 14? Do you have a patron god or goddess?" "I pray to the 7, actually. I've been going to the September as far back as I can remember, and still attend with my mother regularly. But the 14? The gods of your father? Do you pray to them?" "My father was never very interested in teaching us to pray to them. In fact, he left our rearing to our mother. She is a firm believer of the faith, so she raised you to learn she knew, with her gods. You were never given a chance to know the old gods. Then, were you?" "No, not really. When it came to our father's culture, outside of having the maesters teach us to speak our mother tongue, we were on our own," Emond said, his voice getting a bit lower as he said those words. Helamis' heart started to ache for him. "Your father didn't teach you at all? Not the old ways, the stories, the histories?"
"No.
"Everything I learned on my own," he said, but then turned his head to Helamis and continued. "Books on the history of Old Valyria are normally hard to find, but I had access to the Crown's and Father's personal library. Old stories, tales, and myths were told earlier on as they were our bedtime stories. We had the nurses and nannies read them to us every night. The histories, culture, and other accounts I started on when I was 8 or so name days. Once I started learning how to read High Valyrian, I began making my way through the books in the family's private collection. I've read nearly every volume in the Red Keep. I just wasn't as interested in the 14, as I was already a follower of the 7. "You did all of that on your own?" "Yes. I was invested in learning as much as I could, so it wasn't a difficult chore to me. Dragon riding and handling, though, he said as he turned to her. Helamis paused in her steps and looked to him, more than a bit taken aback. That was the most difficult. We all had to teach ourselves everything from the ground up. The Dragon Keepers taught us everything they could, but even they can only do so much. They are still restricted to the ground. Hyliana and I had it the hardest, having older, grown dragons. She's still a bit unconfident in her riding to this day. Aegon was lucky he had Sunfire, who was barely a yearling. They helped one another figure things out and have a very close bond now. Wait, do you mean your father didn't teach you dragon riding? Aemond stopped himself from biting his tongue.
No.
His dragon was the Black Dread. He passed before Rhaenyra had even claimed her own dragon. Aemond excused, but Helamis wasn't having it. Couldn't someone else that could have taken time to go up with you? Learning dragon riding on your own is difficult. I haven't even started mastering it myself. There were only 4 other riders at the time. Rhaenys was in Driftmark, Demon overseas, so they were viable options. Princess Rhaenyra and her husband Lenor were the only other 2 that could have gone up with us. But, the cold silence and the far look in Aemond's eye that followed worried Helamis. They were unwilling to teach us. They kept their focus on Jace and Luke only. Helamis was going to ask another question, but she didn't get a chance. An older man wearing silvery white robes with fiery red trim and outline came out of the side door to greet them. It was time for the private service to begin. What in the fucking 7 hells? Daemon thought, as he and Rhaenyra listened and watched from a thin part of the tapestry. Aemond was lying, wasn't he? Viserys was obsessed with their heritage. Maybe more so than Daemon himself. And Rhaenyra had always wanted siblings. There was no way that he would deny those Hightower cuntspawn there. Daemon stopped his thoughts there, as realization dawned on him. He turned his head to his niece and wife, freezing completely as he saw the guilt-ridden look on her face as her eyes were locked on Aemond. What? No way. They couldn't have. They didn't. Rhaenyra turned to him, her face now paler, looking more than a little ashamed. Daemon couldn't help the flattening of his face, nor the rage that started boiling in his chest and started blazing out of his eyes. They did. They really fucking did. Daemon snapped his head forward and bit his tongue, refusing to speak. Not now, not when they needed to be as quiet as possible, and the only words he wanted to say were words he couldn't take back. They sat next to one another as the older priest with a kind smile spoke the service. His voice was clear and pleasant. The service was based on the beginnings of the 14 themselves. Balerion took his Meleys as his wife, and they raised 12 children. How their oldest son, Eryx, the most just, earned the title as the ruler of the gods and married Tessarion. How Aegorax became the master of all creatures that walked, swam, and flew. How he personally created dragons. How Caraxes, the god of sea, and his beautiful twin, Meryxes, the goddess of the sky, fell in love. Even with Vermithor also falling for her. And when he had tried to run off with her, Caraxes cut off his hand for the insult. And how after, Vermithor fitted a hammer to replace his lost limb and kept working, becoming the god of smiths, craftsmen, and laborers. She was hoping he would continue, but he ended the service there. They had barely touched on the other 5 members of the 14. Aemond, however, had been hanging on to every Valyrian word spoken, was nearly enthralled the entire time. After the priest closed the service, she and Aemond stood and walked to the priest. I would like to thank you for the service, and for allowing it in such short notice. The kind smile appeared once more. That is no trouble, my dear lady. Honestly, it is good to see more people come through those doors. They will always be open if you have need. I am the High Priest Bijan Daneshmand, by the way, if you need to call on me. I am Helamis Pervel. I hope to see more of you and Temple, she said, switching to common. Is there anything more I can do for you today? I am hoping to light candles, to give thanks to my patron god and goddess. If I may, feel free, my lady. And just so you know, all candles here in Dragonglass Temple are free. I know most temples charge per candle, but that is never the case here. Thank you, Vakti Bijan, she said, feeling more comfortable using the Valyrian word for priest than the common word. She gave a gentle bow, and then made her way over to the 4 main statues at the back of the temple. Malaise, Balerion, Eryx, and Tessarion all standing proudly in a row. Eamon spoke to the priest a little longer, making polite conversation. There was a box of candles near every statue, so it was no problem finding them. She went and grabbed a black candle from Balerion's box and a white candle from Malaise. She went forward and stood right between the statues of the father and mother of the gods. She set the candles up on a stone ledge between the two. Eamon had made his way to step up behind her just as she knelt down. He helped lower her with his arm, both being careful not to jar or shake her belly. And to her surprise, he knelt next to her. She didn't mind. She clasped her arms in front of her and began her prayer anyway. Thank you, Jezsejhasa, with my whole heart, for saving me and Babe, for setting I and Lumi free, for giving us second chance and new life. I hope we prove worthy of the opportunity you have granted to us. And no, I will never forget what you have done for us, and will always be grateful. May your flames always burn in my heart. She then went to look for a match, but Eamon, whose eyes had been locked on her, now spoke. I heard your family practiced magic. I was told that every branch had the talent. Is that true? Helamis looked at Eamon, her smile once again appearing on her face. Well, maybe she wouldn't need matches after all. She pointed at the 2 candles with her 2 fingers and muttered softly under her breath.
Ser du sin vesos Yahur masilibagon, limari glason Yahur hade.
En vsos naiot ra naiot vsos.
Te pagon hez sebet na ejot thinge se morge.
She then touched both of her pointer fingers to the candles. In her mind, she chanted Inflammare. The 2 candles lit on their own, their wicks jumping to life. Eamon's face turned to it and started looking at the candles up and down rapidly. Helamis was going to say something to him, but before she could, the other candles on the ledge ignited on their own, not of Helamis' doing. Then all the candles in front of the statue of Bahrain and Malaise. Soon, a wave of light and fire started, from those 2 statues to Eryx's and Tessarion's. One after another they lit, then down both sides of the wall to all of the other statues. It was only moments before every candle in the temple front was lit, flickering and burning happily. A new, proud glow now filled the entire space, even the lamps and candles on the ceiling. Helamis stayed semi-frozen, not really sure what she should do. Eamon's eye was snapping around to every corner, but the high priest was the one most affected by this. He immediately started calling around excitedly in Valayan, and calling the other priests and priestesses down to see the miracle. Helamis, despite herself, started to feel worried, until she looked up to the faces of the statues of the father and mother of the gods. Now, with the better light and the lamps lit, she could see the faces on the statues clearly. She couldn't really see them that well before, not with them in the back. The faces that looked exactly like the 2 faces she saw in the space between the worlds. Helamis' prayer to Balerion and Malaise. The rising sun will eventually set, newborn life will age. From sun to moon, moon to sun. Give peace and rest to living and dead. The 14. She came TOCUS. Helamis says an earnest prayer for her and her past self. Lights 2 candles. The 14. Our sweetie. Shall we let her know we heard her? Oh, we know. Lights everything TF up. The Dragon Glass Temple was a flurry of movement and excitement. The high priest was going back and forth from demanding answers to their questions, to near bowing to her. In that excitement, Demon grabbed his wife's wrist and led her out the exit. He may have pulled her along a bit more harshly than he would have, reminding him of the times he dragged her in front of Viserys, pouting, screaming, throwing tantrums, or like she did when she had done something wrong. Only this time she was eerily silent, choosing not to utter a word instead. He didn't know if that helped or stoked his anger more. They got back to her room in record time. He released his hold on her wrist, slamming the door hard behind him. He turned full gaze to Rhaenyra, who turned her face away, putting her hands absent-mindedly over her belly. He moved back into her line of sight, and she turned her head again. Rhaenyra, he said as he moved one last time. When she once again turned away, he reached his limit. I am not playing this childish game with you. Arima, you will look at him, he barked. She could barely raise her head to him, shame in her face and posture. She struggled and managed to lift her eyes enough to just meet his. Is it true? Did you and Laner not even bother to teach them flying? The spoken histories? About our family, our mother tongue, our gods? Nothing? No, we didn't, she said in a near whisper. Did you teach them something? Anything? Silence. Her face turned away again. Not even one thing? He spoke in disbelief. Pray tell, what did you do for them? Keep us? What did you ever teach them? What attention have you given them? Rhaenyra then snapped back, her eyes now fixed on him with fire, anger now overtaking embarrassment and shame. Those words struck Demon harder than any sword ever had. Don't you dare look at me and speak to me that way, when you made that same choice. When have you ever taken them flying? What spoken stories or histories did you tell them? What words of our mother tongue did you help them learn to pronounce? Silence filled the room, as the two stared at one another, both tempers boiling, both trying to find the right words. Demon turned away from her and went to sit at the end of their bed. Rhaenyra bustled herself over to the vanity at the same time. He buried himself with tapping his foot and taking deep breaths as she busied herself with sitting at her vanity and putting on a hand cream from a purple glass jar. Both keep silent, guilt and self-upset wrestling with their fire in veins. They both knew they needed a moment to cool before talking further. For a few moments they stayed like that, cooling and breathing, until finally Demon felt they were now both ready to continue their conversation. You were the one that always wanted siblings. Viserys always wanted boys. I had thought. Demon started. Rhaenyra scoffed, cutting him off. She turned swiftly into her chair to face him. You were the one that taught me everything, not father. He was never interested in parenting his own children, you know this. Even when I was an only child. Demon winced lightly to himself. So, you didn't, and he didn't. So, Alicent, Otto and Kristen. There were some nurses and nannies as well. Septions and maesters later. So the Hightowers, the Starry September, and the Citadel raised them. Just as Otto wanted, I'm sure. Did you even bother to try to win them over? They are the biggest obstacles to your ascension. You just sat by and let them be reared by the ones that want to see you fail the most? Mold them, bring them up as they saw fit. I was hurting. I was angry. I could hardly bear to look at Alicent, let alone her children, after what she did. They might as well have been raised in Old Town. Would it have been any different? Should just hand over their dragons directly to the Hightowers as well? Rhaenyra went to open her mouth, but then her eyes went wide, and she shut her jaw. Her look changed, and Demon could tell she was now worried about something more. That look grew, the guilt grew, and she now started turning her rings, looking out from the top of her eyelids at him. Demon stood, puzzled for a moment. Demon tilted his head, looking sharply at his wife, like a viper rearing to strike mixed with a confused pup. He was trying to figure out what was going on, what she was hesitating for, when he realized she was hesitating because of him. She was worried about his reaction to whatever she had sitting on the tip of her tongue. Just say it, Rhaenyra, he breathed, a large sigh nearly coming out after his words. Darion is being fostered in Old Town currently. He was sent there was he was 6 days old. Who the fuck is Darion? And why should I care? As soon as he spat out, Rhaenyra started at those words, as a look of pure disbelief not washed over her face, followed quite with a look of shock realization. Then once again, guilt. Maybe others wouldn't know those tiny change to her face, but Demon could read them like an open book. He knew his niece, his wife, too well for that. Daeron Targaryen, father's third and youngest son. Demon shot up from the bed, then froze still, as he processed what she had just told him. A third son? Viserys has had a third son this entree time. And he's in fucking Old Town. What does it matter? Why do you care now? You've always hated them. All of them. Never cared before. So why does it matter now? And with that one line, Demon's rage was quickly deflated, because she had a point. Why did he suddenly care now? because he realized Viserys failed them too. His mind whispered, Viserys failed them as a father, just like he failed me as a brother, and now I failed them just as bad as an uncle. Daemon immediately tried to shake that thought from his head. Sadly, it seemed, the thought had already rooted itself in the forefront of his mind, and refused to leave. The high priest was sure she was blessed by the gods. Aemond couldn't even argue that point if he wanted to. Not after what he saw. The priests and priestesses of the temple had been flocking around her, buzzing, smiling, asking her question after question. How long have you been able to do magic? Since I was a child, but only minor things until recently. What other things are you able to do? I can mend things, but my family mostly used our skills, plants and herbs to heal people. We were very skilled with ointments, potions, poultices. Really? Would you be willing to He knew when she gave him a sideways look, that he returned with his own glance. It was now time to go. She had been handling the long inquisition well, but she was now quickly becoming overwhelmed. He quickly laid the groundwork for their departure, promising to return tomorrow to see if they could talk more, when a loud horn blast was heard. Aemond knew that the horn meant. They had a similar horn at King's Landing and they both meant the same thing. Dragon incoming. 3 blasts. An enemy dragon or cannibal himself. 2 blasts. A wild dragon or riderless tame dragon. 1 blast. A known dragon with a known rider. But who could it be? Everyone on Dragonstone was, oh no, it was one of his siblings. Wasn't it? Pardon. I believe we need to be there to greet our newest guest. Well, yes, of course. The high priest said, but with disappointment in his eyes. Well, suffer. Aemond thought. He needed to see who decided it was a good idea to just drop into Dragonstone. Unannounced, he didn't have to wait long to figure out who it was. As soon as he took Halamis by the arm, and they walked out the front doors of the Dragonglass Temple, he saw them. He'd know what Skyblue Dragon anywhere. Dreamfire and Heliana. He barely stopped himself from cursing. Why did it have to be his sweet sister that was heading here? Heliana dismounted Dreamfire, smiling brightly as the dragon keepers started to take a large lock chest down. In her hands she held a small 3-drawer lockbox, with painted dragons all around it. Aemond's chest with all the things he needed to care for and clean his eye and manage his pain. She smiled happily as she faced the gate, already hearing footfalls making their way to her. She couldn't wait to see Aemond and the newest rider. This was going to be such a wonderful visit. Coming and going, coming and going. Halamis was led hand in hand by Aemond toward Dragon Gate. His determined steps followed by her awkward waddle steps, as she held her white dressing gown and chemise closer to herself. When they walked through the Dragonglass Gate, Heliana was already waiting for them, standing, beaming as she held an ornate wooden lockbox in her arms. The dragon keepers behind her were settling the large blue dragon, Dreamfire, and were bringing down 2 more chests. Brother! She greeted him with a beaming smile, glowing in her golden-green dresses. Aemond walked right up to her, worry simmering under his skin, his arms linking with hers. Mandia, what on earth are you doing here? Did Aegon send you? No, I sent myself, she said aloofly as she tipped the box, slipping it into his arms. You needed your case and your clothes. While she spoke like it was the most obvious thing on the face of the earth, Aemond could feel his exasperation reach new heights. He tilted his head with a glared, with little to no heat at her. You know, you could have sent them over with the next ship. You could have had Aegon or another bring it over. Or I could have gone to King's Landing and grabbed it myself. I wanted to come. I wanted to save you the trip and mother the stress. She has been very concerned about your safety. I also couldn't wait to meet the newest dragon rider. Heliana then carefully let go of the box, leaving it fully in Aemond's hands, then turned to the other girl. She met her eyes and then hit her with the warmest, kindest smile she had seen in years. Aemond had to stop himself from rolling his eyes. This was Heliana, after all. He should have expected this. Lady Peveril, I'd like to introduce you to my sister, Princess Heliana. Heliana, This is Lady Helamis. Pleased to meet you. Hyliana smiled knowingly back at her. It's great to finally meet you in person, Lady Helamis. Wait, what? Jace and Luke were watching from the other side of Aegon's gardens. Hyliana, Aemond, and the new Lady Paravel had walked back through the gate and were now entering the White Tower. Behind them Baela and Rena looked at one another, worry etched on their faces. Hyliana's here. Jace, Hyliana's. But Luke's face fell and his excitement vanished as he saw the twins' faces. Jace's joined theirs quickly, with more than a hint of sadness. Jace? But Jace didn't say anything. He just watched as they entered the tower, 2 guards carrying 2 chests following behind them. Rena paled and looked back to Baela. You don't think Aemond told her everything? Do you? She's his sister. I'd be surprised if he didn't. Rena then turned to Jace. Hyliana isn't one to go about with a loose tongue, is she? No, Jace said lowly, then looked to the ground. No, she's not. If they don't say anything, we don't say anything. We leave it as is, Baela said firmly. But, Luke said lowly. But what if they do say something? What if someone asks them? We stick to what was said on Driftmark 5 years ago, Baela said firmly. We stick to what our grandfathers believe, we must stick to it. Jace and Luke looked at her, but her gaze stayed locked on them. It was only Luke that looked away, ashamed. Hyliana smiled gently as she, Helamis and Aemond sat at a table in Helamis' room. Tea had been served with sandwiches and snacks, with extra fruit and vegetables for the newest lady. Has Mother truly been that worried? He had never enjoyed seeing her distressed. Like a cat expecting kittens, Hyliana began. She's worried you're not safe here, from the boys or from Demon. I'm hoping to calm her nerves with news, and maybe a letter. Aemond nodded once in agreement. I'll write another. Just remind her I'm a guest of the White Tower. That has kept the strong boys and I away from one another. For the time being, at least. As for Demon, Aemond paused for a moment as he considered his words. We've come to a sort of understanding. A silent agreement, if you will. He doesn't seem too keen on breaking it just yet. Nor I, for that matter. Hyliana clapped a little as joy washed over her face. Happy her brother had finally found a friend. You and Demon are getting along then? Sort of. Working toward a common goal? Aemond, I turned to Helamis for a moment before turning back. Yes, that would be more accurate to say. Why would all be not getting along? You are family, yes? Helamis asked as she put down her teacup. Aemond and Hyliana looked to one another. Sadly, the family has been split in 2 for quite some time now. Before we were born, actually. The rift has never healed. It's always been Rhaenyra and her kids. Then our mother and us. Rhaenyra? Your eldest sister, yes? I wouldn't exactly call her sister. But she is the current princess of Dragonstone. This is her island. She stayed outside your door the first night you were here, but you haven't met her yet. She and her boys are sticking to the Drum Tower, for now. But why? What happened to family? Before Aemond could change the subject, Hyliana started to answer her. Told her the story of the death of Queen Emma, Rhaenyra being named heir, and Alicent being announced as the king's new bride. Aemond bit his lip as he moved to the door to order fresh tea. Demon heard that the 3rd Half-Blood Hightower spawn had landed their dragon on Dragonstone, then entered the White Tower. This time it was the girl. But after the revelations that just occurred at the Dragonglass Temple, he didn't honestly know how to feel about it. Guilt was a twisting, tormenting monster, and it was tearing and squeezing at his chest and lungs. He liked it better when there was a bay or the entire narrow sea between them. Distance, out of sight, out of mind. But it appeared that all Alicent's whelps were making a point to intrude upon their island, not even allowing him time to figure out how he felt about the whole situation, let alone what he was going to do or how he was going to treat them going forward, and he hated that. He paced, brooding in his solar as he pondered what to do. He and Aemond were fine with being in one another's space on the surface. There was a deep tension between both sides, but when the girl's life and the dragon's safety were in danger, they had worked together rather well. But Demon was no idiot and knew that Tauba was still furious at the boys and his daughters, as well as his wife. In the few days they had been on the island, the girl kept him busy, which was good because that boy might as well be a walking barrel of black powder. Demon knew this was a recipe for disaster. He was sure that this ceasefire would not last long before he would have revealed in that fact, maybe even poked the bear. But now he couldn't. As he was stewing in his own thoughts, a knock came at the door. Letters and Ravens, Your Highness. From King's Landing, Driftmark, the Stepstones, and overseas. Demon stormed over and rudely snatched them out of servant's hand. 2 letters, 2 raven scrolls. He saw the blue seahorse seal on the second letter. He quickly snapped the seal, opening that letter first. He recognized Vaymon's handwriting right away. Prince Demon, thank you for the information on the wild dragon situation. While we are glad it was not feral, we are both sickened and appalled at what has happened to not only the Peveril girl, but her family. You are correct, it is saying it is an insult to our ancient blood. Our blood should be respected and protected, treasured above all else and all others. This is not only a shame to the ones that did that to them, but onto us for not respecting and looking over the blood of old Valyria as we should have been. Maybe, in the future, this will be a reminder for us to put what and who is most important first. That uppity, insulting motherfucker, Demon growled, crunching his face in anger. He didn't bother reading the rest of it at length, he just glazed over the letter for important information. They had been noticing the Triarchy was using different ships and different vendors. They had reached out to them the past 5 or 6 months. Not before the Prince of Bravos was one of them. Some of the newer fighters that were believed to have been former captives, but none currently. Basically, nothing of import to his current search but eyebrow-raising less. He opened the raven scroll with green wax and a tower seal. Allison's handwriting was swirled and striped across it. Didn't the Tauba send a letter with his brother? For God's sake, send my son back. Now. Vague warning, underhanded threat, blah blah blah. He dropped that scroll with the other letter without care. He'd hand those to Rhaenyra later. He opened the second letter next. The first words he read gave him immediate pause. Greetings, Commander. A smug smile came across his face at these words. It was one of his former men, an old gold cloak now overseas. He knew of only 2 men that fit that, and this one he'd be most pleased to hear from. I had my men investigate this whole slaver mess you told me about, and they found out something a little interesting from the dockmaster. That ship, the Merryweather, is set to return to Port Caban tomorrow. Maybe the day after if the wind disagrees. It's captained by a brute calling himself Red Wave, and his second is named Mark-Roe Scully. Sound familiar, old friend? But that's not the end of it. The Merryweather is returning from a voyage to Tyrosh, and its next port of call? Port Corto in Myr. It's a Triarchy ship, no doubt about that. Especially if the girl was being held in Lys like we assumed. I see no other reason why they land foot on all 3 islands. They have to be working for them at the very least. Anyway, they will be docked and restocking for a week. If anyone would want to pay them a visit before it sails off to Myr, just a thought. Happy hunting.
Ser Julian Erse.
A feral light sparked his eyes as he read those words. His contact had truly outdone himself this time. Demon would have to add some extra gold to his payment for such wonderful news. He tossed the letters on his desk and turned to storm out the door. He would tell Rhaenyra the news, and try to convince her to let him get on Caraxes and go find out what the fuck was going on. She won't want him to, for sure. There was already a war going on, and there was no way this news was going to do anything but make things worse. But he needed to go. Had to go. He would impress upon his wife the seriousness of this. They had to find out how deep this went. They had to confirm if they were Triarchy, and if not, what they were doing for them. And besides, it had been far too long since Demon fed Caraxes any Triarchy meat. Demon shut the door to his solar, leaving the room with its streaks of light from the window quite empty. Now discarded and forgotten next to 2 opened letters and a scroll, was the second unopened raven scroll. A scroll with sea blue wax, but a dragon's seal. The art of war, singing, and painting. Chapter summary. Demon talks his wife into letting him go, and the bard and artisan are hard at work. Rhaenyra stood tense, spinning her ring on her finger as she looked at Demon, a forlorn expression on her face. You're not seriously thinking of going to that port on your own? Demon locked his jaw. He couldn't let her talk him out of this. He needed to be the one to go there. It's confirmed to be the ship, the captain, and the people that killed her family. Kidnapped her. They are closely linked to the Triarchy. We need to learn how linked. Why they kidnapped and slaughtered an entire Valyrian family. Not to forget how they got a hold of a dragon or a dragon egg in the first place. Daemon said, hand resting on his sword hilt, as he then stepped away from the table and closer to his wife. Or, more than likely, who they got it from. A nobody captain just happening upon and hatching a dragon egg? While at sea. That's rather hard to believe, he explained. Rhaenyra held her left hand in her right as she turned her head. I know that, but... She hesitated. She couldn't think of a proper rebuttal. She didn't want him to go, didn't want him in danger's way. She knew they all needed answers, but why should she have to send her husband? We need to find out who and why, and maybe even the what. The sooner, the better. Demon said softly, as he reached out and took her hand. Rhaenyra knew his words were true. Demon had talked to Aerie only once about her capture so far. They only knew what happened to her and her family only up to being taken to an island and bonding with Lumi. But her curiosity didn't outweigh her unease. She put a hand over her rounded stomach and took a breath. It doesn't have to be you, Demon. We can send someone else. Rhaenyra replied. Demon nearly snickered. Who? Jace? Luke? They've never been to the islands. The change in her face let him know what she was thinking. She didn't want to send her boys either. Aemond, she answered. He's interested to learn as well. I'm sure Vhagar knows the way. Demon actually snickered this time. Have fun getting him away from the girl's side. He'd been glued to her since they met. He hasn't been further away from her than the next room. Not since he snatched her up and brought her here on Vhagar. That bit of information took Rhaenyra back as she blanched. The boy, Alicent's son, had taken a shine to Halamis? She'd worry about that later. Demon, I Trulli, it has to be me, and you know it. Demon interrupted. I have crazes, we can be there and back in a flash. The Triarchy still fears me. And I know what questions to ask and how to ask them to get quick answers. Rhaenyra bit her tongue and placed a hand on her belly. Demon wasn't fazed but instead followed his hand after it. It won't be long. A day or two, and I'll be back, he said, meaning every word. Rhaenyra tried to think of what to say, of what to offer or who to send in his place. She pondered but came up with nothing. It was best for Demon to go. She didn't have a leg to stand on to send anyone else. She took in a deep breath and readied herself. Then I command you to come back to us safe. A smile lifted onto the side of Demon's mouth. As my future queen wishes. Now let's go see that green girl. The bard strummed on his strings in the far of counter of garden. The artisan sat not far away, having finished the charcoal outline on a 2 canvas set up in front of him. A dramatic rendition of what they saw at the White Tower. The window large enough to stand instead of the mid-sized window it was. The dragon looking taller, healthier, and with fewer scars. The girl with flowing hair and dress, looking like a goddess or queen. The bard then turned the pages he was working on back to the first page, and after a moment started the song over again. The ink pen nearby just in case. In a tower so high, where moonlight gleams, lives the woman with hair like fallen snow. At her side, a dragon with eyes full of dreams. In the night their bond truly shows. White hair, white dragon, white tower so tall. Through their pain, they stand strong and true. In the wind they hear the dragon's call. Together, they'll see the night through. The dragon, all scared, stays at her side. With a heart so pure, she brings true light. In that tower they watch as other dragons fly. Hand and claw they stay thought the night. White hair, white dragon, white tower so tall. Through their pain, they stand strong and true. In the wind they hear the dragon's call. Together, they'll see the night through. By the whispers of few, their story grow, of a bond that none can ever sever. In the Tower of White, their hearts healing slow, together, they'll shine forever. White hair, white dragon, white tower so tall, through their pain, they stand strong and true. In the wind they hear the dragon's call, together, they'll see the night through. Sounds perfect, the artisan said to the bard. The bard smiled widely at his companion. The artisan then leaned over and opened a leather bag filled with paints and brushes. Now, I'm going add in color. You work on your next song. This time, why don't you mention the one-eye? He's always at her side. The guard even says he's the one that grabbed her up, brought her here to Dragonstone. The bard nodded his head. So, a vague love song next? Yes, but not too vague. We want them to know it's them. Just not name them outright. We'll hop on the next ship to King's Landing to sell the paintings and sheet music. Showcase the new songs, too. Soon, there will be plenty of gold for the both of us.